So last week, Russ, we were talking about that album, America, Daniel Hope.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to my little story about West Side Story, because West Side Story, Bernstein was on there. And I mentioned that in the high school musical version that I was in, I was shark number 3. Right?
Right.
Well, guess what? I get an email this week from someone who was in that production, and he tells me I wasn't shark number 3. I was shark number 5.
Wow.
And I'm like... And it made me mad because I was not shark number 5. There were 5 sharks. And I was at least shark number 4, but I definitely wasn't shark number 5.
Wow.
Okay. So, I just want to, I just want to say, he's, my good name is being smeared here. I was either shark number 3 or shark number 4. I was not shark number 5. I know who shark number 5 was because he was terrible. And I'm not going to say what his name was. So
this person from way back when was listening to the podcast?
Yes, he was.
That's pretty amazing.
Go figure. Yeah, I think that's all that listens. I don't know why he's listening to maybe he got word that I kind of, I was kind of, he thought I was raising my my level in as a shark in West Side Story.
Wow. Your theater days live on.
Yeah,
That's
they do.
Huh?
They just never go away. Wow. But you know what I think? I think it's just he's just jealous because I am a podcasting superstar while he's just some guy, which in the real world really makes him a higher level person than me. But
where's he listening
I think regular
from?
Guy is higher level than podcasting superstar.
Where's he listening from?
From New York, of course.
New York, okay.
Yeah. Where
guy
this happened. He's probably still in Staten Island. I have no idea.
Okay.
Which kind of says something about him because I've moved on to Kyoto, Japan. I'm exotic.
You certainly are. That's why.
That's what the ladies say.
You do have some exotic quality to you. It must be why I've stayed friends with you all these years. Yeah,
we need to put this podcast on video so that the rest of the audience can enjoy that exotic quality.
Enjoy your exotic quality.
You're right. All right. So anyway, I'm just here to say, maybe I was shark number 4, but not shark number 5. There it is. It's out there. Go ahead, right back to me. This guy who's bothering me on email.
You're definitely in the top 3 sharks that I know. So
yeah, I know. I think so. I got to dance. Okay, and, they taught me some cool moves. Oh. In West Side Story, I got to do the cool gang walk. With the snaps and the
that
jump. Yeah,
later in the podcast.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
There's going to be more, huh?
Listeners who tuned in last week know what we're talking about. Others will say, what are they talking about? Anyway, we're just giving a little continuity from the narrative from episode to episode. You're listening to Adult Music, episode 56.
Thanks for reminding me because I really did forget.
This is the podcast with, we say music for the mature mind, bringing you recent classical and jazz releases every week. Something new to listen to. Yeah. And some other commentary too about Mike's brief musical career. My
brief career as a theater person. Well, in high school. That doesn't really count. The funny thing is you have to dance in West Side Story, and there aren't any high school boys that can dance, so we learned from nothing, which is kind of cool. So you can do that. Later on, that's what made me play in bands, because I figured, I could learn to dance from nothing. I could learn to play an instrument from nothing too. So I played the bass. I couldn't quite learn to play the guitar up to the level of some people who were in college with me. So I kind of went to the bass, and
No, you always need a bass player. People are always looking for a bass player, right?
And you get good really quick because you wind up playing in all these different bands because nobody has a bass player. It's kind of, everybody wants to play the guitar and be the star. But actually, you're kind of a star at the time, though. Sting was really big, right? The Police, and so it was cool to be a bass player. Like reggae was kind of popular, the English beat and all that stuff. So
I always thought a lot of the better songwriters were bass players. I mean, you got Paul McCartney, Brian Wilson. I like that band from Scotland too. What were they? Delamitri, Justin Curry, bass player.
Wow.
Yeah, bass players, they write from that pivot down below, so they see the harmonic movement differently. Right. And
they build. I guess they build from the bottom up.
They build from the bottom up.
Yeah.
They see different possibilities. Yeah. So.
So they're kind of interesting songwriters that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to build from the bottom up tonight with lots of new music.
Are.
Yeah. And before we get going here, I just want to remind the listeners in the episode description, all the music we'll talk about, you can find links to, let me backtrack on that. There's one album here that is not quite available on streaming yet, I think. This weird label, but we'll talk about that anyway. For most of the music, you're going to find links to Spotify and Apple Music, except for the one. And also at the top of the description, there's a link to all the music in one place. That's a full episode playlist on Deezer, our streaming platform of choice, where you can follow us at username Adult Music Podcast. You can catch the playlist and the podcast there, all in one spot. Whatever platform you happen to be listening to us on, or whatever app, if you don't see the full description or the links aren't active, you can always check us out on our host site, Podbean, where you can follow all the links to the music and other resources. Now, if you enjoy the podcast tonight, please do follow or subscribe on whatever app or platform you're listening to us on. If you take a moment to give us a ranking or write a review, that helps us get listed in the recommended browsing categories for music commentary, which helps us grow our audience. And I do have to say, for the first time in a while, we've been in both the Apple and Podbean recommendations. So
very nice.
Thanks to listeners for that.
Maybe it's because people are noticing the new neon logo
that glowing we have. Neon logo.
Yeah, it really stands out. I really like it.
Yeah, thanks to Fast Signs, Staten Island, for that new logo.
Yeah,
and
nice work, guys.
Yeah. Also, if you'd want to look us up and you want to see our handsome mugs, you can come over to our Facebook page. We've got a Facebook page. Look for Adult Music Podcast. You can also leave a message or comment there. And if you want to contact us directly with more content or questions, comments, we'd like to hear from you by email as well. Reach us at adultmusicpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com.
Yeah, go to the website and imbibe my exotic look.
Yeah, check that out.
Oh boy! All right. Anyway, so where are we?
Where are we going to start tonight?
Let me see. Was there some, okay? There was Bernstein. Did I want to say anything else? I don't remember now. Nah, that's all I got. Okay, I guess we're just going to get right into it. And going back to Baroque, I really like to start with Baroque. So I've got one for this weekend. I've got some coming up, but I'm not really ready for the other ones yet. But tonight, we have rather, speaking of exotic, a rather exotic recording here called Quid est Veritas, Los Musicos de Su Alteza. Let me sort those languages out for you. Quid est Veritas is Latin, and they're the words of Pontius Pilate to Jesus, what is truth? Okay. And then Los Musicos de Su Alteza, this is Spanish now, the music of His Highness, I guess, or something like that, his high level person. And the artists on this, it's an ensemble, but they're listed as individuals. There's a soprano, Olala Aleman, who we heard already, actually, in the Melancholia recording. But she sang from I guess it was November, but it was late last year we talked about that recording. And it was kind of a brooding Baroque album, and she was with a different ensemble there. This is a completely different ensemble and really album. The harpsichord, organ, and artistic director are all Luis Antonio Gonzalez, so it's a Spanish ensemble, and a few other musicians on this, Pablo Prieto on violin, Eduardo Fenol, I hope that's right, on violin, Pedro Reula on cello and viola da gamba, Miguel Rincon on chitarrone, which is the big guitar, that's what that means, and Alfonso Sebastian on the chamber organ.
Chitarrone. I like the way that sounds. Yeah.
Chitarrone, yeah. Hey, what do you play? Hey, I play the chitarrone. It kind of sounds like a kind of pasta.
Yeah, he's got a chitarrone.
Oh boy, that's in line with our new logo.
I like that
expression there. Yeah. Let me see if I got this guy. Yeah, Fenol. It is Fenol. Okay, Eduardo Fenol. So they're Spanish, and this is rather a different take on a lot of this music. It's early Baroque. So when we say early Baroque, we generally mean Italian Baroque. So it's going to be Monteverdi and people from that era. Okay, so what is truth after Pontius Pilate? I wonder if I should even mention this, because this is an idea a friend of mine and I had. I'm not going to mention who it is because I don't know if he wants you to know. But we're always looking for some kind of, we work here in Japan teaching, and the podcast is one of our, kind of escapes things. If we can make this happen, we'll just do this. I have another idea, an exercise gym, which kind of deals with like Pilates, but we call it Pontius Pilates. Work out like a Roman. Pontius Pilates. What do you think?
We don't have crucifixes in the background or anything, do we?
Yeah. Oh boy, we could have stained glass. It'd be great. Anyway, that's one of my ideas. I shouldn't be making these jokes during Lent. That's terrible. Anyway. Well,
what is the phrase they have now is what? Live your truth, right? So.
Oh, live your truth.
Yeah, your truth. I hate that phrase. As if there are multiple truths. So.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. No, he's kind of in my mind now because you got all those scriptural readings from this time of year. Anyway,
that's good. The body positive gym. There you go.
The
Pontius
body positive
Pilates.
Gym. Yeah. Pontius Pilates.
Or we could make it Pontius Pilates and make it a boxing gym.
You could do that too.
Yeah, we could do that.
And you could have like the Pilates and the boxing. That'd be good. Anyway, anyone out there who makes a fortune on this, you're welcome. Okay, we give us some royalties for that. 5% is fine. You can have the rest. All right. Anyway. That's what we request. We'll just humbly request that. We're not going to sue you. You can take your ideas, though. No problem. They're all free. They're all out there for you. Okay. By the way, the Melancholia album was on Pentatone. This particular album, Qvid Veritas, is on IBS Classical is the label. And I don't know much about this label, really. I'm assuming
I looked
it's
it
Spanish.
Up.
Yeah.
It's hard to find. And it's not on streaming and...
Yeah, we couldn't get this on Deezer, and is it on Spotify and Apple?
No, couldn't find it anywhere.
Okay, so you guys are going to have to buy this one, I guess.
I'll put the link to the IBS website so you can at least find the details of it.
Okay, and it's worth hearing. Let me just give you a little description, and you can see whether you want to think about this. All right, first of all, there's the booklet notes. One of the nice things about I have all these CDs, and I've been really relying mostly on CDs for this podcast. I collect them anyway because I'm a complete nutcase. And the classical CD notes are kind of like classical CD album covers, where some of them really do go off the wall and really don't work. And this is really one of those. This one's this one's okay, but there's some pretty pretentious nonsense in it. As a teacher and sort of a music scholar, I like to kind of make things clear, right? And a lot of these booklet notes go off in these bizarre directions. Now, obviously, some of them are like translated from another language. I don't know, maybe they use Google Translate and the words just aren't there, but sometimes they just don't make much sense at all. And there's sort of like a fad for this in the arts in general, or there was when I was younger, and I guess this is just the residual thing. Anyone out there wants clear booklet notes, give us send us an email, because we can do it. We're really good at this. Okay, the booklet notes go into an essay, because the album is called Qvid Veritas, What is Truth? Pilate's, I keep wanting to say Pilates now, Pilate's question to Jesus. That always confused me, because they call it Pilates. Why? Where did that name come from? Anyway. All right, there's an essay about truth that includes Italian and Latin quotations with no translations to English. I guess they want you to type them into Google Translate and figure them out. Yeah, thanks for the thanks. I bought your CD. You're not going to give me translations? Come on, man. All right. Yeah, why should I have to type them out and figure out what they mean? There's a lot of name dropping of obscure Renaissance era thinkers in the booklet. I didn't know who they were, But when we get to the music, we read that all the composition offer glimpses of truth. Some of it not flattering, and a lot of it kind of has to do with love. Yeah, there's kind of like a.
I picked up a line just for you in here.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yes. I bet I know it. Well, I don't know that I know what it is, but I might have picked it up myself because I picked up a few. Okay. A lot of them are about people who know how they will suffer in the future. A lot of these songs. This is going to be not an upbeat album, but it is really enjoyable. It's really good music. We should remember that composers from this era used their music as a vehicle of the message, an interpretation of the text. So at this point in the Baroque era, you didn't really have these extended instrumental works like you had at the end of the Baroque era with Handel and especially Bach, or even Vivaldi. That was all new at the time. The whole idea that you could sustain interest for 3 minutes or more with purely instrumental music, because they had to figure out a way to get it to hold together, to make it make sense to people. And they did this through structural means. Okay, they were the way the harmony works and the sections of the music, which evolved over time. But in this case, the music is kind of supporting the message of the text. It's sort of rhetorical. Like it'll often echo like an idea that comes from the music. And this happens a lot in opera, even in like as late as Handel, where you'll hear like somebody will say, I want revenge, and you'll hear the violins go da 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 da. They're kind of like giving you the feeling of this, what this person's feeling in their chest, that sort of thing. And we get some of that here. Okay, the recording was made in Santo Domingo Church in Daroca, Zaragoza, in Aragon, Spain, in August 2018. It just came out this year, so they've been sitting on this for about 4 years. Understandable, I guess. It's a small label, and then there was the pandemic. And the organ on this album, not the chamber organ, please. There's a full organ too, but it's not like a giant, huge church organ. It's smaller and older.
It sneaks in and out without creating a huge presence on these tunes, I found.
Yeah, I want to mention, by the way, the really powerful, big, gigantic organs that you hear. There are one or two of those in Europe, but they're all of those organs are in America. These things are like supersonic jets or something. The ones they made in the USA. I don't know. They just kind of. I guess it's the whole American thing with technology, but these organs where you can, like, if you push the bass pedal all the down at a full volume, the entire church will crumble around it. It's that kind of power, right? You don't get those out of organs in these European churches. I went into like some of the churches in Paris. They can do that. They have bigger organs, like the Notre Dame organ, which incidentally has been restored. It's ready for use again, it looks like. So I'm really happy about that. The Cavaillé-Coll organ in Notre Dame in Paris is back in action. That's a big, powerful organ. I was one of the things I miss about Europe and spending time there, and you can't even do this in America, which is a shame, is walking into these very old churches. And often, if you're in a big city, for example, especially like Paris, which has so many like churches with great organs, like Saint Eustache, Notre Dame's, a lot of them, students from the conservatory will give free concerts on these organs at like around 5 p.m. Like on Wednesdays, and they do it because they need time to get on the organ to see how it's going to work, and so you can just walk into a church and hear this organ concert for free, and it's just spectacular because it's just a wonderful thing to be able to do. There's nothing like that here in Japan or really in the U.S. where we're from either, which is kind of a shame. I guess you could hear the monks chanting here. I do walk through temple grounds. You hear them.
Yeah, the harmony's not quite the same, but
no, but it'll give you instant enlightenment if you catch it the right way. Anyway, okay, so the organ that we're talking about here, it's a little smaller, and it's a historic instrument by Bartolomé Sanchez, made in 1742, and it has a peculiar temperament, which I think he means the tuning. Okay, by temperament, it's
okay.
So like tempered, like Bach's the well-tempered clavier. He's writing these works.
It's
for,
a bad-tempered clavier.
Yeah, the bad-tempered clavier. Is that a PDQ Bach work?
Yeah,
that probably
could
is
be a PDQ Bach work. Yeah.
I think probably the bad-tempered clavier. Yeah. But what they mean by temperament is, if you hear a modern piano, it's equal tuning, so the distance between all the notes is absolutely equal. But that's not natural. They're kind of fudging the tuning a little bit to make that happen. What actually happens in well temperament is it's being measured by frequencies, and I think you'll have the true note values for each of the notes. But what happens is, once you get into changing keys and things like, you have a home key, and if you start changing keys and going to other keys, they start getting more and more sort of well, they're not out of tune, but they sound a little more not pure, let's say. All right, as you get away from the key that the tempered tuning is made in. Now, what's cool about that is you kind of have this idea of how far away from the tuning you are. And when you hear string quartets can do this, but they tend to adjust to make it all sound equal. So it's kind of cool. You can tell how far away from the home key you are when you're playing on one of these old keyboards that has well temperament, which I think is very cool, actually. But we're so used to the piano's equal temperament. What the piano is tuned with is equal temperament now, it's called, okay? But well tempered is a different thing. Okay, we also hear a more modern chamber organ by Jose Maria Arrizabalaga in La Frasquez de Valle, 1985, made in 1985. And there's also an Italian harpsichord by Alangotto from Norwich in England, I guess, 1983. All right, it says here, the musicians go for their own truth. Speaking of having your own truth, these interpretations,
they've been watching
that's what
Oprah.
The notes say. That's not me.
They've been watching Oprah.
Yeah. It's your truth. I guess in the arts you can say that. I think it's, this is my interpretation, my truth. Okay. And don't rely on tradition. Now, this is a welcome thing, because if you're listening to recordings and everybody's playing according to tradition, all the recordings are going to sound the same. I get this question a lot in classical music, whereas, like, if you hear like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony once, you have one recording, isn't that enough? But they're not all the same. They are different, and I'm trying to kind of put that across a little bit on this podcast as we go, and especially as time goes by. Performing sort of techniques and traditions tend to change too. So the way we hear things is a lot different. One of the more interesting things is to compare recordings of, say, Beethoven now, and this is because of the new Baronreiter edition, with Beethoven like in the 1980s, and they're a lot faster now. And I think a lot of that has to do with, some of it has to do with the new scholarship, but a lot of it also has to do with it also has to do with the feel of period instruments, but it also has to do with the fact that we just live in a faster moving society now, and people just have this, kind of tempo in their step, I guess, and that's just what comes out. I think in Beethoven's time, like before there were motors and cars, things were just slow. And I bet the music, if we go back to that time, the music would all sound really slow to us, but it would probably be very natural and fit in with the rhythms of life of the time to the people who lived then. All right. Anyway, the musicians are trying to bring out the truth of the discourse. Well, let's see how they do. Well, I should play this for you, really, because you're not going to be able to hear it on your own, but you can check it out. Okay, the first piece is by Benedetto Ferrari, 1603 to 1681, and this piece is called Amanti, io vi so dire, which means, lovers, I can tell you. And what he wants to tell you is, it is far better to flee from any beautiful and graceful woman. Oh, what a way to start an album. Okay.
This is the one where I picked up the message for you. Yeah.
Okay. You want to? Okay. Go ahead.
And in the end,
Yeah.
A beautiful woman never offers roses without thorns.
Oh, yes. That's good.
There you go. Yeah.
And also true. Okay. Well, that's why the rose is the symbol of love, because it's got that beautiful scent and it's red like passion, but it's got those thorns that make you bleed, too, when you hold it. Yeah. All right. Okay, I actually love Olala Aleman's Spanish-sounding tone and her phrasing. It's like her native Spanish language inflection has crept into her tone. So she's got a darker... She's labeled as a soprano, but she's got this kind of darkness to her tone. She never sounds like a tweeting bird, which a lot of sopranos do. Okay, this language inflection is in her tone, but it's not in her pronunciation of the Italian texts, which sounds Italian. Very compelling. So it's kind of like a Spanish-sounding voice and this Italian-sounding like accent. It's really odd. Most sopranos will sing this in a bright tone, but she's got a darkness to her voice that sounds more like a mezzo's. She does get up into the higher ranges of the soprano, too, so she's definitely a soprano. And here she's in a really good mood, despite the name of the... or the text that she's singing. This is kind of an upbeat track, okay? Far different from the Melancholia album, which interested me right away because the Melancholia album is all really dark. This is a lot lighter here. Okay, so I was curious to hear what you would sound like on this. Okay, this is accompanied by a strumming guitar until the last verse, when a harpsichord takes over, which is also kind of interesting. This song is charming with funny lyrics for the time. Okay, maybe you won't think they're funny if you hear them now, but if you kind of put yourself back 400 years, these lyrics would have charmed that audience, who are all concerned with court intrigues and stuff like that. I know from experience that the hope of pleasure is founded on torment, she sings. Beauty and courtesy do not usually go together. If you don't believe me, all the worse for you. Oh, boy. This is quite a text. I'd give this a listen. At least try to find it on YouTube, or something. Maybe someone else is singing it. Or maybe you can get her singing it there. Who knows? It's a charming song and still has the ring of truth 400 years later. What
really arrests you is the, in this tune and in a couple other ones, is the kind of unusual pitch drops in the vocal part, that just fall off and sort of, you're not really prepared for that, because you don't hear that in later Baroque music or other music so much. And it's kind of disarming to have this sort of, falling, like, glissando of a voice, and it breaks the sort of harmonic charm of it, and sort of slaps you across the face with the point of the message. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah.
All right. Next we have Maurizio Cazzati. That's an interesting name. We hear a Sinfonia by him, which is an instrumental work. This has long drawn-out chords on the lower strings, accompanying a quicker melody on higher strings. With harpsichord continuo, it sounds very elegant. And it's pretty brief, too. Then we have another piece by Cazzati, La Verità Sprezzata, The Truth Despised, which was written just yesterday. No, I mean, it could have been. Truth is personified in this text and complains. Truth is complaining about the contempt and neglect she suffers. Oh, if only she could come back now. Yeah, truth is always presented as a woman. I think there's a relation to wisdom, and in the Old Testament Proverbs, wisdom is presented as a woman as well. She's like a person, or like some kind of like lower level deity or something. Okay. This piece becomes across as a bit of a highly extended recitative or recitative. I want to say this the English way, recitative. The voice is fairly naked through the first part. Naked meaning there's no instrumental kind of clothing on it. She's just singing, not quite a cappella, but very, very sparse accompaniment. Yeah. With only discrete harpsichord accompaniment. Very pretty, by the way. When the text gets more dramatic and rhetorical in the middle, the harpsichord comes in more fully to accentuate that. All right. Now, one issue I had with this album is Olala's tone doesn't change. All right, she's one of these singers who she's always singing the same tone. So what they've done to sort of make the album interesting is change the instrumental arrangements that she's singing that are accompanying her. So a lot of the interest in this album, the thing that's going to really draw your attention in, is going to be the instrumental playing and the combinations of instruments that are used. Remember, at this era, the composer isn't necessarily saying what instrument has to play which part. Continuo, the bass could be anything. It could be a harpsichord, it could be a guitar, it could be an organ. So it's not so strict. So they're going to do that. So as far as singing goes, she's got a really nice voice, as I mentioned when I talked about track 1. I liked it a lot, but I kind of wish she could change her tone a little bit. She does at certain points. I'll get to that. But we mostly get this kind of like Spanish-sounding, darkish tone. And it's very appealing, but you kind of want a bit of variety as the album goes on. Next, we have the great Claudio Monteverdi, Ecco di dolce raggi il sole armato. Here, we learn that love may make one suffer, but there are compensating pleasures, and the singer in this one decides to indulge in those. Good for her. Okay, this piece is accompanied by a harpsichord. Yeah, that's the decision I would make too, I have to say. Oh, it's going to be torture, but it's an Italian thing too. They like to talk about the thorn, but the pleasure is going to be so good that the piercing of the thorn is going to be worth it. Okay, accompanied here by harpsichord and a string instrument, which I think is the chitarrone, Russ's favorite instrument, favorite name for an instrument anyway. Chitarrone. Maybe I'll tell some girl that's my name. Hi, I'm Angelo Chitarrone.
Come over to my studio. I've got a big chitarrone.
God. Oh boy, this podcast is getting more adult all the time, isn't it? Okay. In this piece, I missed a bit of lightness in the voice. This one would have been better sung by a lighter sounding voice, because it's kind of it's talking about something light, right? And a lot of these Baroque era tunes, or these arias or songs, we see canzoni, kind of the voice or the sound of the instruments is really, like we said, rhetorical. So if the voice is light and bright, it's going to give you a light and bright feeling. And the lyrics here, the text is pretty bright. Anyway, onwards to track 5. Again, Monteverdi, Lasciatemi morire. This is the famous lamento, the lament of Arianna, which is the only surviving part of a lost opera. And it's pretty famous. I really wish... I keep hoping one day some scholar is going to dig up this opera from somewhere in some long-lost like castle or something.
A wine jug in some kind of buried,
Yeah, but all we have of it... Yeah, all we have of it is the lament, and it's a really... a spectacular piece for the time. Again, our ears are a bit jaded. We really have to put ourselves back into that era in order to really... appreciate this fully. Monteverdi was excellent at, how would you say, rhetorical sort of writing in his music. Okay, so it's interesting to hear this accompanied by only a harpsichord and chitarrone, with occasional chamber organ coming in. When Arianna mentions, speaking of rhetoric, when Arianna mentions how happy Teseo will be when he arrives at Athens, the key is major, and then it turns to the darker minor when she expresses her own situation, stranded on Naxos, left by Theseus, Teseo, as he moves on to Athens. This is a 10-minute piece, and it needs more variety of tone. This is really where the soprano is found a bit wanting, because her mood changes a lot, as happens often in a Baroque era. You always... The whole rule of Western art in general is contrast, and that's especially clear in Baroque era singing. Like, you'll be angry, but then you'll be like lamenting your fate, and then you'll be angry again. They're always doing sort of things like that. This aria is full of that, and I felt like a little change of vocal tone would have been welcome. Some kind of variety of phrasing would have been good too. I mean, she sings this pretty straight. It's a nice voice, but it's a long piece, and there's a lot of variety in it, and I felt like she could have added to that. Okay, a lot of the sections end with these drawn-out weeping type figures in the accompaniment and vocal. This is kind of what you were talking about, the kind of descending glissando here. And she kind of sings them all the same. But again, that's part of the rhetoric, so she's sad, so you get this kind of, tone from the... That's part of the rhetoric that's accentuating the emotion in the Baroque era. It was pretty simple then. It got more complicated later. Okay, anyway... Next, Monteverdi again. We get 4 pieces in a row by Monteverdi. This is the third. This is called Et è pur dunque vero, which is, it is therefore true, okay, which is what this means. Again, a tune with vero, or true, in the title. Veritas, vero. A welcome, brighter key here, and a change in energy from the singer. So that she changes up a little bit here, which was nice. Strings come in to play a melody and lift the piece a bit. And Almares responds to this positively. Okay, so I think the singer's really picking up from the accompaniment, her energy. I like how she hits the harsh passing dissonances with some volume in order to make us aware of them. I like when that happens because it hurts so good. It's kind of like the pain of love right there, that dissonance, Yeah. Some people say that... love is just a lifetime of pain, I guess, but I don't know. Anyway, Claudio Monteverdi again, quel sguardo sdegnosetto, that sdegno, like disrespecting, I don't know, look, or that disdainful look, I guess would be sdegnosetto. This is another tune where the singer demonstrates through words and musical accompaniment that the pleasure of love is worth the pain. It's a lively work with soprano reaching in to her high end. She's reaching for her high end. And the guitars and strings accompanying with discrete harpsichord. Okay, next we get into some composers that I've really grown to like over the years because we've heard a lot of their harpsichord recordings have been unearthed and are recorded. Next one is Tarquinio Merula. I have an entire album of his... works for harpsichord and organ, and I love it. It's great. This one is a vocal work, Or che tempo di dormire, now that it's time to sleep. I guess what that's about. Actually, no, it's not about that. This is a spiritual song. It's a canzone spirituale sopra alla nanna, which is a bedtime song, and the people singing the song, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is singing it to Jesus, the baby Jesus. Okay. We hear the rocking of the cradle represented by a 2-note ostinato played 162 times. That's one for every game of baseball season. So, it's amazing. In the song, the lyrics, Mary, again, this is pretty appropriate for the time of year here. Mary foresees the passion and asks heaven to be silent before the dream of truth. Heaven is rather sacrilegiously depicted with the lowest notes the vocalist sings. Wow. Okay. Heaven is usually, we think of it as being up there somewhere, and it's usually depicted in music with high notes, but not here. Interesting. The rocking accompaniment has an odd dissonance in the second note, indicating that something is off, and I'm guessing that's going to be Mary's worry. So she's foreseeing Jesus' passion and death. And it's her baby, she doesn't want that to happen. There's a disturbance in the heart of the vocalist. Mary tells Jesus to sleep peacefully now because torture and horror are in his future. The rocking stops in the last verse as the Madonna decides to contemplate her sleeping child. It's actually a pretty moving work. I rather enjoy it.
Yeah, it's very hypnotic and has a kind of eerie kind of quality that keeps you... unease a little bit.
It is. It's a little bit of an uneasy work, even though it's a Baroque work, and the harmony is, by our standards, rather, I don't want to say basic. It's never basic, but simple. It's uncomplicated, let's say. Okay. Next, we have Giovanni Felice Sances. He's Spanish. Sances, Sances. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but this is a Stabat Mater. Stabat Mater is Mary, Jesus' mother, standing by the cross. Okay, Stabat Mater, the mother is standing. Dolorosa, suffering. So she's looking at Jesus dying on the cross, and it's her. It's a description of her. This poem has been set many, many times. In fact, we may have the famous Pergolesi setting of this prayer coming up soon, because there's a new recording of that. There have been a few in recent years, actually. But this one is by Giovanni Felice Sances. And the previous work, the one about Mary singing the lullaby or the bedtime song to Jesus, it melts into this one. There's no real pause between the two pieces here. The change is almost unnoticeable between the two tunes, is almost unnoticeable. And of course, I mean, they weren't written to be played like this, so it's kind of a neat decision by the ensemble. We finally get to hear the fantastic, unique sound of the church organ on this track. The vocal quality changes at this point to having a lot of reverb on it, or room noise. It could be the echo of the church, because they're in this church now. I guess this part was spliced into the performance, as the singer and accompaniment had to squeeze into the tiny church where the organ is. It's not that the church is too small for people, but it's too small for the recording equipment, so they're all kind of crammed in there. All right, in order to mic up the organ in the church the way it's all set up. The notes say it was difficult to record here, and we're going to have to let this oddity in the recorded quality go due to the circumstances. We should be glad to hear this organ. It's got an individual sound, and I like the repeating line it plays throughout this work. It's comforting, like a reassuring hand on one's shoulder as the prayer progresses. All right, we get an instrumental next. Maurizio Cazzati again. We've heard him before. Passacaglia, that's a repeating bass line over which there are a set of very varied improvisations. This is a really lovely work, a real gem. With the descending line and gentle melody, not unlike the theme in Pachelbel's Canon. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that. It's not a canon, though. Actually, I'm not entirely sure that Pachelbel's Canon should be called a canon, although that's what he called it, I guess. Because it's really a passacaglia, or at least it has a passacaglia bass. And the upper voices are all in canon with each other, but the bass isn't. So I feel like the structure of that piece is really a passacaglia and not a canon. My brother once wrote to me, and he asked me, what would be a good piece to play for the bride's, entry music at at a wedding. And, he gave me the usual choices: Mendelssohn, Pachelbel, the things they always use, or Wagner. Here comes the bride, basically. And I told him that it's you don't really want to wow the crowd with your musical choices. I mean, they're there to see how beautiful the bride is, and they just you want to just go with tradition, I think, at a wedding. But if anyone wants to try something different, this would be an interesting piece to program. It sounds a lot like Pachelbel's Canon, and I think it's suitable for a wedding. Maurizio Cazzati, Passacaglia, check it out. Okay, it's a brief, reassuring work.
I think, it's a nice processional for bride because it's slow, but it has motion, so it doesn't. It just moves along, and the string arranging sounds are very pretty. So I could see that working. Yeah,
you can see that as a substitute for the Pachelbel Canon.
I'll keep that in mind for when you tie the knot, Mike.
Yeah, right. That's going to be happening soon. All right. Anyway, last piece, Claudio Monteverdi, Si dolce è il tormento. I bet you can guess what that means. So sweet is the suffering or torment. Only Italians think like this. Oh, the way you make me suffer is so sweet. Oh, man. All right, this is a lovely work with an appealing, catchy, descending melodic pattern. Really nice. Anyway, it's an appealing program, and the focus is on the rhetoric of the music. The album is beautifully programmed for variety. I've mentioned I would have liked to hear more variety of tone and approach in Aleman's singing, but the focus here is more on the compositions and putting their musical rhetoric across. An enjoyable listen on period instruments, and with a great organ in the Stabat Mater by Giovanni Felice Sances. So I'd recommend this, but you're going to have to, you're probably going to have to buy it. Maybe you could hear like some fragments of it on YouTube. Check it out.
Yeah, I noticed when I looked it up on the site, which I'll put the link for, they do have it available through some platforms, but they're very limited, and it doesn't include any of the major streaming platforms. They're not listed there. Sort of more obscure resources for music downloads and whatnot. So I don't think we'll see it show up on Apple and Spotify anytime soon. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I like the sparse instrumentation that sort of served the message. I got a real kick out of reading the lyrics in translation.
They were fun,
the suffering of love. And, it's not so different from looking at social media posts and tabloids today. So we haven't learned anything. Well, some of us have. But
See, but when Italians say this stuff, though, they think it's a good thing. Today, everybody just wants to make everybody else suffer. It's just really horrible.
I found the voice a bit overpowering sometimes in contrast to the sparse instrumentation, but overall I liked it. And those sort of mournful, as I said, voice drops in pitch and things, which we don't hear in a lot of works, I thought were kind of arresting and interesting. So interesting music of the period. I liked it.
Okay, moving on to our second and last kind of classical recording of the day, because I kind of chose a jazz work that's based on a classical work for my third choice. But let's go for the second one first. This is Paris, 1847. The music of Eugene Jancourt. I guess J is like a Y in French. I can't remember now. Eugene Jancourt, I'm going to guess. Jancourt. It could be Jean. I can't remember now. I'm trying to think of another French word with a J in it.
This was one was interesting because I listened to it and then I read the program notes and I got a chuckle because it sort of echoed in a much more specific way of what I was kind of thinking because it's an unusual recording. Yeah, it
is. It's all music for bassoon. Okay, and the bassoonist in this case is Mathieu Lussier, and he is accompanied by Camille Paquette Roy on the cello, Sylvain Bergeron on guitar, and Valérie Milot on harp. They're all French, I guess. They all have French names anyway. I didn't look them all up. Okay. Jancourt, I guess. I guess that's going to be it. Janvier, it's going to be Jancourt, sorry. Yeah, like January is Janvier. So Jancourt is the composer. He published a méthode théorique et pratique pour le basson in 3 parties in 1847, which is part of the name of the album. Only 10 years after launching into his career, it's 234 pages long, and the work permanently influenced the development of the bassoon and its repertoire. Okay, this the book is a goldmine of information on performance practice in mid-19th century France. And of course, what Jancourt is concerned with is the tonal color of the bassoon, and using it, I guess, correctly would be how he would think. And remember, the French are real fanatics when it comes to the timbre of the instrument and how to shape it so that it's shown off to its best effect. They're exceptionally good at that. I just love listening to French composers for that reason.
I thought, it's kind of interesting. We were talking about oboe works recently, last week, and then in a couple previous episodes, and we thought that when we had the Vasquez oboe piece too, and then the oboe, when we hear that tone and the way, whether it's because of convention or the way that it's used, we think, pastoral quality. We see meadows and sheep and those kind of things. And it's a double reed instrument, right? But then the bassoon as another double reed instrument on, the low range, skipping by the English horn and whatnot. What image do we get from the bassoon is often like more like, just bassoon to buffoon. It gets that comic relief.
I even made that joke in my novel, Extreme Music, which you should buy on Amazon, everybody.
You definitely should read it.
couldn't resist. The buffoon concerto features it's like a homeless guy that's just dragged out onto the stage. No. The homeless guy is a different one. This is
gets the comic relief role in a program music or something. Something comes loping out of the forest. It's the bassoon, and it gets the short shrift there,
I'm sorry. The homeless guy was the hobo concerto.
But
I'm the worst. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so the image of the bassoon is as sort of comedy relief, some kind of bumbling line or something mysterious. But I think that's not fair because in some way the bass clarinet gets that ominous role, that it comes in, and then as we saw last week, bass clarinet. We know because we love bass clarinet. It can be really beautiful. It can hit all of these low tones, but it also has this great lyrical melodic quality, and why not the bassoon too? And so after I read the album notes, it put it much more eloquently. What I was.
These were really good really informative album notes here. Yeah.
What I actually think that the music here, it's actually nothing special in terms of classical things. It's pretty. It's on any other instrument, it would just be, another set of recordings. But it does really show the bassoon as, something, a legitimate contender to melodic material and all of its possibilities. And that's good. And there's one other thing that I really like about it, but I'll save that for the end.
Yeah, okay. And in fact, it also shows off Mathieu Lussier's beautiful tone on this.
Wonderful.
He comes across sounding really great. If only because we don't get to hear the bassoon in the solo role for this extended a period usually. So that's kind of nice. Incidentally, I want to mention the bassoon, of course, is the instrument that plays one of the most famous lines written in the 20th century, the opening to Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. But we're going to hear the jazz Rite of Spring in the next piece, and
that's right.
They replaced the bassoon with a bass clarinet there, which is very cool. Anyway, but in the original Stravinsky work, you hear that bassoon, that dun, da, da, na, 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 na. That's a bassoon, and that's really its best moment. Really, it's got a good moment in Beethoven's Fourth Symphony too, in the fourth movement, but that's a different story. All right. Okay, so the ensemble here has added an extra harmonic instrument to the cello because it's generally duos. They're two melodic lines, but they wanted some harmony they wanted to fill out the harmony a bit, these musicians. So there's a harp outlining harmonies and plays the low bass line in the three popular tunes, and then the guitar adds harmony and rhythmic exuberance to the sonatas. Now on this album we hear Jancourt, I keep saying that, Jancourt wrote 3 petites sonates, so small sonatas, and also 3 grandes sonates, which are a little longer and they have an extra movement, big sonatas. And we hear all 3 of the petite sonates here and only one of the grandes sonates. The first one is a petite sonate in Do majeur, which is C major, and this one is the first one of the set. This is charming. It's a 3-movement work, charming lyrical theme. That's basically what we're going to say about all of these works. They're different, beautiful themes, but they're all very lyrical. And it starts in the low end of the bassoon. We get to hear the whole range of the bassoon in these works. These are kind of I don't want to say pedantic because it makes it sound boring. It's not boring, but it's kind of like pedagogical material. Pedagogical.
Well, there's studies.
There's studies.
Really,
yeah.
So, etudes almost.
It's good to hear though. As the cello chugs along on the second line, you can just hear the guitar filling out the harmony and adding slight percussive rhythm on its attack over the wide frequency of the bassoon in this register. The movement is classical sounding. The bassoon puts one in the mood of the pastoral, though not like the oboe does. It's an ideal spring movement. Okay, so this is a good movement and really album to hear at this time of year. Because only a cello provides the second line, kind of the counterpoint, the music can sound sparse. And the work is ultimately pedagogic, but it's musical as well. And this is a very soothing movement. And the second movement is an adagio, traditionally the slow movement, and this is even slower than the already pretty slow first movement. The melody floats in midair like incense as the cello line sweeps up the tonal elements in the lower range. Okay, so I guess it's sweeping up the ashes from the incense. I don't know. It's my image there. The guitar is discreet. It's a gorgeous melody. The cello steps out a bit when it goes into its lowest range. Otherwise, it remains contrapuntally song-like under the constantly singing bassoon. This is a very brief movement. Third movement is a rondo, and in fact, all of the third movements in these petites sonates are going to be rondos, which means a returning theme. It goes away and comes back, and it's a way to get your bearings, really. This is how instrumental composers composing instrumental movements figured out how to keep the audience aware of what was happening. Okay, they were just kind of, this is one of the forms they would use, this repeating theme. The rondo theme is slightly dancey, as they generally are, and rhythmic. Once we depart from it, we hear more figuration in the bassoon. Apparently, Lussier, the bassoonist, studied Jancourt's method and exemplifies all of the beautiful playing it espouses. The French and their sense of instrumental character and timbre is pretty amazing. Timbre. A lovely work all the way through. Set this one as your alarm to wake up to in the morning, and I guarantee you'll have a really good day. It just really it just feels good. It's a really nice work, and it's not challenging to the ear at all. In fact, it's rather soothing. All right, fourth movement, Gaetano Donizetti, arranged by Jancourt. These are his arrangements of popular songs. This is a romance from L'Elixir d'Amore, The Elixir of Love, by Donizetti. We switch to the harp as the accompaniment here, and it gives a dark, haunted, desolate atmosphere. The bassoon takes the main melody, and the cello provides occasional echoes and answers to the bassoon's lines. Very nice. It's a memorable melody anyway, as we know from the opera. Yeah.
I wanted to say here, for any listeners who follow along on the Deezer playlist, only on Deezer, for some reason, as I told you this week, they have all the Jancourt pieces here, but the three other pieces are missing from the Deezer streaming. And I reported it to them. I noticed when I looked on Apple and Spotify, it's following the album directly. Somehow on Deezer, they missed the non-Jancourt pieces. So maybe they'll get those if they see my message or not. Yeah. But if you're trying to follow along and wonder what's missing, it's the non-sonata works are not on the Deezer streaming list. So,
yeah, just to make that clearer, the three non-Jancourt composed works are arranged by him for the bassoon. So he wants to set them so the bassoonists could play these fantastic melodies. And they come in between all the sonatas. Tracks 5 to 7, we get the Deuxième Sonate in Fa majeur. That's F major. Do, re, mi, fa, right? Yeah, F major. It's the second of the Trois Petites Sonates. And this starts with a moderato. This starts out almost as a vocal statement in the bassoon. It kind of sounds a little operatic and rhetorical, really, like it's kind of like making a point or explaining something. Then it gets cheerful and does some of the charming scalar runs we get from the bassoon. It seems that when you're doing these runs on the bassoon, you have to breathe each note in the scale. You have, because it's you don't really get like one breath and then like a bunch of keys clacking and you get this legato melody. They always seem to have to. I have to ask a bassoonist one day about this. They always seem to have to blow every note, which sounds really challenging. I'm not sure about that though. Okay, there's also a cello providing the counter melody, accompaniment, and occasional continuations of the line. Listen carefully for the discrete guitar. There's one rather impressive arpeggiated episode by the bassoon in this movement. It's very short. Second movement, Adagio. Very little pause between the opening movement and this, and they blend together beautifully. Jancourt has a good ear for appealing melodies, even in his pedagogical works. All right, this would have been a good teacher to study with. This movement is very song-like in nature, and the warmth of Lussier's bassoon tone carries the listener along, with the cello again providing counterpoint, and the slightly less discreet guitar this time, a bit of rhythmic impetus and harmony. This movement is a bit longer and more substantial than the middle movement of the previous sonata. It's over 3 minutes long. Still kind of short, but not like a minute. Melting tones from the bassoon, really lovely. And the third movement is a rondo. It's like a jig this time. It's in 6/8. The guitar steps out a bit to make sure we're getting the rhythmic accents. And the bassoon remains melodic in the departures, while the cello plays a lot of figuration and arpeggiated chords. I really enjoyed the bassoon's melting lines in the second departure from the theme, followed by its figuration. There are a lot of nice ideas in this work, and the entire work moves at a leisurely pace, sets a good mood. Okay, the 8th track is another popular tune. This one is Bellini, another one of those bel canto composers from the early 19th century. So they used to call this bel canto, beautiful singing, right, in Italian. But in Broadway, when you can like sing really loud so that the people at the back of the theater are pinned against the wall from the power of your breathing, they call that the can belto school of singing, which I think is hilarious. It's an old joke, the can belto. She can belt it out. All right. I still find that funny, like 30 years later. I just think, I don't know.
It's funny.
It is funny. Okay, this is the cavatine from Norma, the opera Norma by Bellini. The harp provides the melodic content, and there's a gorgeous melody that's sung meltingly by the bassoon. There's no cello in this particular arrangement. Okay, tracks 9 to 11, we hear the third of the Petite Sonates, the Petite Sonatas. The first movement, Allegro. These are a lot quicker than those slower, moody songs that we've been hearing in between. So it adds they're a nice contrast to separate all this rather cheerful material. This particular one is a mid-tempo classical theme. It's fairly predictable, but lovely nevertheless. Once the bassoon plays its theme, the cello gets a chance to take the lead, while the bassoon up front plays some descending and then ascending, scalar figuration deep in its range. There is a guitar providing discrete harmonic information. Second movement is my favorite rhythm, a Siciliano. This has a bit of a forlorn quality to it. Siciliano rhythms generally do. As the bassoon beautifully laments its melody, the cello stays close, the guitar takes on a big rhythmic role here. Lovely winding melody from the bassoon. And the third movement is simply labeled Finale. Okay, it's a burbling and fairly energetic theme. All of the tempos in these works never get anywhere near presto. They're always kind of at this. That might have something to do with the instrument, though, how it's best shown off. The cello chugs along to assist the guitar with the rhythm, while the bassoon plays the appealing melody. Okay, next we get a Serenade by Franz Schubert, arranged by Jancourt from his melodies. Here the harp comes back to play the rocking chords of the accompaniment, and the bassoon stays in its lower, darker range. This is brief and pretty. And then for the send-off, we get the third of the Grande Sonatas. This one's a 4-movement work. And it is bigger, it's longer than the other 3. The first movement starts with an introduction, Larghetto, and then moves to Allegro non troppo. Okay, it's got an introduction here, pensive and rhetorical lines from the bassoon. Then the music livens up to resolve the tension, and suddenly starts to resolve the tension, okay? The guitar accompanies with a Spanish-sounding arpeggiated chord pattern, and the bassoon's line is broken up during the intro. Then the entire tone gets chipper, and the bassoon's line hops around for the main themes. The bassoon shows a lot more technique in this movement, and I guess the other 2 pieces of the Grand Sonatas too, which we don't hear, than we heard in the 3 Petite Sonates. The guitar is far more audible here than it's been at any point on the recording. During some of the more impassioned sections of the score, the guitar strums loudly and accents its notes for rhythmic impetus. Second movement is Andante cantabile, a very Italian marking, singable. An excellent opening note at the very low end of the bassoon's range, and it sounds with a satisfying, reedy buzz. I love that sound. Then it climbs up into its more lyrical range and plays the gorgeous melody accompanied by an arpeggiated guitar line and a rocking to and fro cello line. Third movement is a set of variations, air varié, Introduction, thème et variation. Okay, introduction, theme, and variations. The intro is pretty slow and rhetorical and dramatic. The theme is simple and pretty and has a middle 8, which kind of makes for some interesting variations. There are, I heard how many variations? 3. Okay, it's not that long a movement. The first variation has a lot of figuration from the bassoon. We can hear the guitar plucking its strings and the cello busy with melodic fragments. The third variation is very fast. That's the second one, I think. Oh, yeah, the third variation is very fast, the fastest we've heard on this record. Very impressive playing from the bassoon, who has to puff away at the instrument to articulate all the quick circular figuration. Cello and guitar both are in harmony roles, and this movement, surprisingly, is the shortest, at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Usually variation movements go on forever, but not here. Then we get the final movement, the fourth movement, Moderato. This is kind of a laid-back theme in the bassoon. The cello and guitar make themselves known in this movement, and it's a rondo. The opening theme keeps coming back. The song-like main theme is heard again and again. The second departure is also song-like in 3/4. So you got this kind of waltzing rhythm. It resolves with some nice octaves from the bassoon. We hear the 3/4 main theme again, and that's it. I never would have thought an entire album of bassoon-led music could be so appealing. It says a lot, first of all, for Mathieu Lussier's appealing tone and phrasing, and probably a lot for Jancourt's method itself. All right, I enjoyed this all the way through without any flagging interest, but I have to say, if you're looking for something intellectual, this is not for you. These are pretty straightforward works, and maybe something good to discover if you're kind of not looking for a challenge, if you're looking to unwind. It's very pretty all the way through, and the music is, it's fairly predictable how it's going to go, but we're listening to this for the timbre, and that is really nice.
Yeah, it's usually, as we mentioned, used for comic or eerie atmospheric effects in the orchestra. So it's a nice chance to hear the bassoon as the main melodic instrument. Interestingly, here, which was the most appealing thing to me in the setting, is that it's paired with the cello. You know, and both those instruments are in, the sort of baritone voice range. And so the cello,
it is kind of odd, isn't it?
As a counterpoint, rather than a contrast, you would have flute with cello or something, or you would think a violin and a bassoon. You'd have
then the violin, the higher instrument would be the lead, and he didn't want that.
You could think so. Yeah, maybe just because of the range. I mean, you could do it, but I like having both of those. That's my favorite range. I like the cello of all string instruments.
I like the lower ranges as
well.
So
I found sort of a warm atmosphere created by that timbre, and it gets that French, focus on timbre. But within that warm baritone voice range, you get to hear the bassoon in the full range of the instrument.
Yeah.
Which really made me, consider things I don't really think about with the bassoon. It has a very kind of melodic range, wide range, that it can, be the main instrument at ease. However, the few places where the movements do dip into the lower register are really interesting, because it can be rather, alarming sound that wakes you right up when it gets down to the depth. So it does have that character to it as well.
I like that sound as well, though.
And so you get all of that contained in these, melodically, they're not surprising works at all, but you listen to them for the timbre and then appreciate the full range and possibilities of the instrument. And the musician here, Lussier, he's a master of the instrument, and he shows varied articulations and a beautiful tone, and it make you appreciate an instrument you may have overlooked as just a strange kind of large tube in the wind section of an orchestra.
Right.
Yeah, nice feature.
Yeah. So anyway, I had two pretty albums, and now we're going to go for the rough and ready here, a spring themed work, but not the kind of spring you expect. Stravinsky's Rite of Spring was a ballet. It premiered in 1913 about a human sacrifice that was supposed to make the plants grow in primitive times. It's not usually not the way we like to think of spring. But I didn't go for a classical recording of this. Recently, the pianist and band leader, Jim McNeely, jazz big band leader, Jim McNeely, he did a jazz arrangement of the entire I want to say the entire ballet, but let's say all the themes in the ballet, because he really doesn't arrange the ballet. It follows the same order.
It's a new work, yeah.
Yeah, I want to say something about that, because I read that in the notes, and I'm not completely on board with the fact that it's a new work. But he's conducting the Frankfurt Radio Big Band here, and Chris Potter is featured on tenor saxophone, and boy, does this guy put through his pay. He's some kind of player. This is really a fantastic performance by him. And the album is called Rituals. And basically what the ritual is, the piece is called Rituals, but it's really the themes from The Rite of Spring set to jazz. And he's actually changed a lot of stuff too. And it says here that I actually ordered a CD of this like about a month ago, and it hasn't shown up yet.
I get it for summer.
Yeah, I'll get it. Yeah, the Rite of Summer. The idea was to commission Jim McNeely to compose this work for Chris Potter. It says it's not a jazz version of The Rite of Spring, which is true, but instead a new composition, which I'm not. It uses like a lot of the themes from A Rite of Spring, so I don't think you can call it a new composition, in my opinion anyway. It was inspired by the sound language of The Rite of Spring, which is listed as Le Sacre du Printemps here, which is the French title, which it premiered under. The performance was a huge success of this jazz work, which is why Potter and the the big band, the Frankfurt Radio Big Band, decided to record the whole thing again in a studio. Now, that premiere happened in 2013, and I've only just gotten around to recording it recently. Okay, I think they just performed it, and they were just going to let it go, and then they decided we should really record this. And I'm glad they did, because I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really nice take on this work, with plenty of verve and aplomb. It says the HR Big Band. This is the Frankfurt Radio Big Band. Glides through the complex rhythmic and harmonious score that McNeely composed in the spirit of Stravinsky. Again, he composed a lot of stuff here. He changed a lot of the lines, but I feel like the harmonies and the gestures are all Stravinsky's. I mean, it's all identifiable as The Rite of Spring, except that he's changing a lot of things. So I think it's a little too much to say it's a new composition. I think it's... Yeah, you know what I kind of thought of when I was listening to it? You know how they'll like release say the alternate take of Hey Jude or something like that by the Beatles, and it just sounds totally different than the one I kind of thought that was kind of like that. Oh, they just unearthed this jazz version of The Rite of Spring, and the themes are a little different, stuff like that.
I don't know.
Hadn't arrived at his final version yet, but
my take is that it was sufficiently different, but it evokes a lot of the same kind of responses, because it goes through the same sort of transformations and aims at the same kind of thematic material, although it uses different devices and instruments to get there.
But the entire work, the structure of the work is the exact same as The Rite of Spring, except for the final movement. It follows the ballet's order in its themes, completely. Anyway, let's talk about this. The first track is called Rituals Adoration 1. Now, in the original Stravinsky ballet, the first tableau, it's separated into two parts, and the first one is called The Adoration of the Earth. And it sort of shows the dancers kind of doing these sort of like ceremonies about, these sort of, to welcome spring. Okay, so this starts with that famous bassoon line, but it doesn't end the same way. It kind of goes off in a different direction. We hear the da 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 da, and then it kind of goes off. It keeps descending. It's a little different. So recompose, I guess, but there's a strong reference to Stravinsky there. And it's famous for being a bassoon line, but here it's played by a bass clarinet, which was kind of intriguing, I thought. It solos a bit over wandering notes, which is possibly a piano. I couldn't really tell. We get a lot of the familiar woodwind harmony, which is really fantastic in this and in the original work. But the melodic lines are slightly changed and greatly expanded. So far, this doesn't sound like jazz at all, but an alternate run of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. Like, I do love the breathy separated woodwind section with the repeated bass note. I'm trying to remember what that was now. I should have gone to the ballets, because each scene has a name, and I should have just gone by that. Classical listeners would be able to follow that, but I didn't do that. I'm afraid. Okay, we hear there's a harsh loud chord and the saxophone, which we don't hear at all in the original Rite. This is Chris Potter, and he plays something soulful, and we're out of Stravinsky's territory at this point, though we're still hinting at it. The brass section plays some jazzy chord punctuation, like when you hear like in a big band, bap, 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 that kind of thing. Really great, as the sax solos. And then we get the very famous rhythmically syncopated section of the original score, like dun 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 dun. That one, with its offbeat accents, but here accompanied by drums and rather swung. It's got a bit of a swing to it. It doesn't come across as savage like it does in the original work. I should say, I shouldn't call it the original work, but the work that it's arranged after, or that it's playing off of. He's going for something more comfortable here. That's not a criticism. That's just his what he wants. It's enjoyable, actually, because it's usually pretty intimidating in the original score. A lot of the Rite of Spring score elements are used as signposts for what's going to be improvised on. So you'll recognize your part in the score, and then there'll be this improvisation on that. There's an intriguing sax solo over the next section after the dun 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 dun. Okay, as the rhythmic patterns detach and get more out of control, we reach a point of chaos, which is not in the original score. There's a transition to See, I couldn't really tell because I didn't have the information in front of me. This is a tenor sax. I think it's probably still Chris Potter, but I'm not sure. Is he switching instruments here? Or?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the sax player, which I'm guessing is Chris Potter again, plays a virtuosic bop-type solo with lots of loops in the figuration. Next comes the slow, lurching section of the score. Dun, 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 dun. That one, fairly faithful to the original. The music remains much as it was in the original score, with some touch-ups to brighten the brass, and with some wailing solos by Potter. He really is the star, man. He gets a fantastic sound, and he's right up front. This must have been a thrill for him to play. All right, we get to the next track, Rituals, Adoration 2, which continues, with the material that Stravinsky's writing. This section begins with the bassoon and flute playing what I believe was the Sage's entrance music. It's a flute and bassoon. I can't really imitate it with my voice because I don't really remember the melody, but it's a total texture change. There's some kind of light marimba tapping out a rhythmic figure beneath it. I couldn't really tell what that was. But it's got that kind of bell-like, hammer on key kind of sound. The next wild section is fairly measured here, not as wild as it is in the Rite of Spring ballet. And the ensemble gets some time to show its timbral tone off here. Everything gets wild again, and this track ends with a change to the next track, which is called Rituals, Adoration 3. This begins with Potter playing a wailing solo alone. This was a big wow for me. I thought this was a pretty thrilling... it had fantastic energy to it. It just really struck me. This peters out, and we get the chord played when the sage blesses the earth, and then this kind of wild dance starts. I called it a wild ritual section. I should have looked up the name. To tell the truth, Stravinsky's music in this guise makes me think we're at a big Las Vegas show rather than an ancient ritual. It sounds like you're in a room and the carpets are plush and all these half-naked women with these gigantic headgear on or something. I don't know. I kind of got that impression. That's not an insult, but it's just the image that came to me. It just kind of made me smile. It's great, but it just comes across that way with all the brassy glow, okay? All right, we move on to the second part of the ballet, which is simply called The Sacrifice, and that's what it's called here. So Rituals is the name of the piece, and this is Sacrifice 1, track 4. This starts with the same rhythmic pattern as the Stravinsky score, but the melodic material winds downward instead of rocking back and forth as it does in Stravinsky's score. I enjoyed a lot of the bending of the woodwind chords here, a little ear candy. Lots of good low reeds, too, in this section. This sticks fairly close to the score's structural and melodic profile, but it's touched up. The pencil line melodies that follow, when I say pencil line melodies, I mean they're very sparsely harmonized. You're just hearing like a melody played in an octave with a lower instrument. They're harmonically touched up a little bit, and the wild dance with brass bursts that follow is given a swing rhythm, and Potter solos over walking bass and swinging drums after that. You just call this the rite of swing. You should have just called it that. Woo! And you have a right to swing.
Yeah, I think that's a Phil Woods album, actually. But
is it really?
I think so. The Right to Swing. Oh, cool. Yeah.
I think it's a pretty obvious title, though. Okay, some dissonant right chords are heard. Right, meaning right of spring chords, are heard. Then we get the brass playing over driving quasi-rock rhythm. Very cool soloing here, and there's a loungy sax line that ends the movement. All right, Rituals, Sacrifice 2. Now this takes us to the end of the themes from the ballet proper. This is where the sacrifice begins in the ballet, with the mysterious ticking rhythm and the curling upward bassoon riff. Dun, 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 ba-na-na-na. That part. People who are familiar with the Rite of Spring score will know exactly what I'm talking about, because this stuff really sticks out, even though it's really dissonant. Okay. Then there's a da-na-na-na-na-na-na, da-da-na-na-na-na-na. That kind of reminds me of the music in the original King Kong when the natives are doing the dance. I swear they must have, because that was 1933. They must have lifted it from this score.
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like it's taken by a marimba, but I don't know that it's a marimba. But it's kind of like this, again, hammered bell-like instrument.
I thought it was vibes. But
could be. Yeah. A marimba might not have the sustain. Okay, yeah. So maybe the vibes. Okay, yeah. That would be a more jazz-oriented instrument anyway. I still have this like classical ear, so I default to classical instruments. I don't know what that is. It's a classical instrument. Okay. Some arpeggiated woodwind patterns transition to a rather light, unaggressive version of the second syncopated part of the dance. He takes a lot of the aggression away, which is intentional here, and it makes the work really appealing, I have to say. Although, when I was younger and I first heard the Rite of Spring, I thought all the dissonance and the rhythm and the loudness of it was really exciting. It was like a rock, song. The sax gets a solo under a repeated note syncopated figure in the harmony. There's a piano in there and some other instruments. I like that. Some other instruments. Yeah, they played instruments. I don't know. I didn't know what they were. That's why I wrote that. It changes to brass with drums midway through and gets louder as the sax starts wailing again. Chris Potter again, really impressive. There's a combination of the score and a jazzy feel in this part. They're kind of both going on at the same time, with the drums providing the jazz and the rest of the ensemble is providing the Stravinsky-esque score. The sax solo ends and the next section starts. The sax this time takes a lighter but still virtuosic solo. This builds to the big wailing climax accompanied only by drums for a while. And the brass come in. The actual moment of sacrifice is heard in the sax at the very end. And the piece with a thud ends. But that's not the end of this particular piece. The sixth track is called Rituals Rebirth. Okay, and none of this is Stravinsky. This is all Jim McNeely now. This starts with a pulsing bass. It sounds like a piano string being struck or plucked, actually. Like really load in the piano. I'm not really sure about that, though. It's probably a bass, though. This section is completely new, and you can hear a harp playing a circling arpeggio as the brass play the ominous material. There's also a distorted electric guitar in here, a little surprise, a little ear candy too, which plays a few notes and goes on into a timekeeping pattern. Solos from soprano, saxophone. Is this Chris Potter still? Does he play all these instruments? I don't know. I think of him as a tenor saxophone. Then we hear the tenor saxophone. So I'm guessing there's a soprano saxophone, and then Potter plays the tenor. I wish I had the CD. I'd know. The ending echoes the right with its harsh chords. I thought this must be fun, if difficult, to play this work, because you get to wail like throughout. The ostinato bass continues throughout the track. The sax winds down and peters out, and so does the orchestral material. We hear an echo of the opening theme, Stravinsky's famous opening bassoon theme, on minus its final note in the sax this time, as the piece ends. And that's the end of the piece Rituals, which I thought was really thrilling. And I think you'll especially like it if you like Stravinsky's original score, and if you're not a purist. If you are, you want to stay away. I like things like this, though.
It's cool. Yeah, I would definitely say at least become familiar with, The Rite of Spring. Listen to it once. Otherwise, it'll be more fun. Yeah, it'll be a lot more fun. And I didn't listen to it immediately before this, but just on, I have a really nice recording of.
By this point, I've heard it so many times, though.
Yeah, that the basic, progression and key figures are still in my memory, so I could appreciate sort of where this was, building on, and then, the pivot points and where it was going. And yeah, really interesting orchestrations, arrangements of all the big band to get big effects, and with Potter's amazing solos. Yeah, really
and also
cool.
a fantastic recording as well. I mean, it really impacts. It's really clean,
dynamic.
Dynamic, really great. Okay, so a fantastic recording. By the way, anyone who wants to, if you're not so familiar with the Stravinsky score and you're not going to listen to a 30-minute ballet, it is easier to absorb a ballet if you can actually see it performed, because then you kind of understand
the movements,
what the movement is pointing to. There's a fantastic movie by Wim Wenders called Pina, which is about the deceased choreographer Pina Bausch, the German choreographer, and the beginning is her choreography of a section of The Rite of Spring. It's not the entire ballet. Well, it might be. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's not. It's very different than the original. It's her more modern take on it, but it's a good way to get to know the music. You might want to watch that. It's really powerful. I liked her her choreography a lot, actually. Let's see. Okay, so there are 4 more tracks on this album, and they're all Chris Potter compositions, and they appear on his earlier albums. On this album, we're hearing Jim McNeely's arrangements of these 4 works, and Potter's playing them. Okay, the first track is called Dawn, and this is from his album The Sirens. And the tracks on this album kind of, play off of Greek myths. So the sirens would be the sirens from the Greek myth. And Dawn, with her rosy fingers, this is a line that comes up in Homer's Odyssey a lot. Okay, this piece starts with a really classical type sunrise figure by the winds. You hear these like chords, and they're kind of light, and you get a sense of the haze of the morning from them. It's something classical composers would do. The sax plays a sultry melody, and perhaps awakening from an exhausting night of either lovemaking or drunkenness,
or both,
or an all-night debauch, or both, or both. It did give me that kind of feeling, an exhaustion. You don't really want to be getting up at this point. This eventually morphs into a piano-accompanied solo with subtle drums and bass. Potter is a virtuosic soloist, and he's inventive in his solo here, as he is really throughout the Rituals piece.
And you get a lot of nice interplay with the other saxes on his original tracks here, especially this one,
Yeah, another sax takes over at one point too. The other saxes, as you said. The figures are a bit, they're different than Potter's. He kind of contrasts a bit. Eventually, all of the brass combine into a controlled cacophony of solo lines. I love when that happens, really. I'm guessing that it's Potter again after this section dissipates. He shows his chops. We get a descending wind chord figure toward the end. as the various saxes re-enter their controlled cacophony. Waves of wind and brass arpeggios bring us to the end, where we're left with a set of gorgeous resolving chords. Nice piece.
Yeah.
Next was a piece called The Wheel from Chris Potter. Well, the piece originally appeared on Chris Potter's album Underground. And this is a really funky piece of writing here. This starts with a trash-talking, looping sax. It's really kind of sassy sounding, which I really enjoyed. That the muted trumpets in the band take over as the sax frees itself and starts a confident solo. And a really sassy one, too. It kind of really does sound kind of like something nasty is being said here. It's got a very cool rhythm and theme. There's a brief calm interlude, and then the funky rhythm starts up and a muted brass instrument, I'm guessing a trumpet, but it's hard to tell from the attack on this, solos in syncopated fashion. It could have been a wind instrument too, I wasn't really sure. This piece is high energy throughout. A sax solo follows, probably Potter again. There's an electric guitar with a wah pedal as part of the accompaniment, giving some squishy textures to the overall vibe. High energy, screaming solo. I thought this was a thrilling work, if a bit repetitive, but Potter makes the most of it. He's got a lot of ideas as well as a lot of chops. This sounds like a fun theme to solo over, and the Frankfurt Radio Big Band in McNeely's arrangement bring the electricity. All right. Next, another track that originally appeared on Chris Potter's album The Sirens, called Wine Dark Sea. Again, this is a Homer reference from the Iliad and the Odyssey. This is chilled out again. This must have been a pretty chilled out album. Haven't heard it though. Another fairly chilled out wind and brass opening, as we heard in Dawn. The mood is established and the sax comes in and solos with a rather romantic feel in long, warm tones. The energy picks up a bit as the piano plays chords and the drums establish a solid rhythm, because it was kind of rhythmless at the beginning, or hard to kind of pull out. The sax solos more energetically over this, and he gets up into his high range, and the playing is always melodic throughout. A trumpet takes over and solos in a mellow evening sort of way. And as he picks up energy, the band accompanies with crescendoing swells and the brass and wind. This ends on a low emphatic chord with the sax winding down. The last track is called Okinawa, and this is from an album called This Will Be with Casper Tranberg and Chris Potter. There's a nice opening to this piece. I like this piece a lot too.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, an Okinawan sounding modal circling harmony in a soprano sax opens this piece. Again, I think that's a soprano sax. It eventually settles on a repeating circling figure with groups of notes in threes. So there's kind of like a dun 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 kind of feeling, but then they're not triplets though. They're kind of straight. The soprano sax solo that follows is lovely and touching, and about 2.5 minutes in, the drums start a quasi solo. They get like sort of exposed, but the drummer really throughout quietly taps on the snare, and there's like a subtle quiet rhythm to this work. The accompaniment is mysterious with floating brass and wind chords and a harp glinting in the texture. This chord figure keeps repeating between drum solos. I put that in quotation marks. And the chord figure's reverse direction as an ostinato bass starts up and creates a clearly defined rhythm, which the soprano sax solos over. He gets a bit of a swing in there and plays a lot of winding snake charmer patterns, which a lot of soprano sax players do. They like that. They like that snake charmer sound,
Yep. I think the tone invites it,
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. This. But the thing is, if you're a guy like Kenny G, that's your whole career. You're just making that one sound.
Why doesn't he ever get bitten by it?
He can put us out of our misery if he can just get bitten by the snake. All right. The solo gets pretty wild as it goes on, and the opening circling figure is reestablished by the whole band. The piece ends with a cadence and a winding figure on soprano sax. So I'm guessing that's Potter on the soprano sax.
I think so. Yeah,
it would have to be.
Yeah.
All right, I thoroughly enjoyed this album. It's good spring fare and good fare for the entire year, really. It's a great punchy recording, very clear. It really impacts through your speakers. It'll give you that good chest cavity feel if you got the equipment for it. And I really enjoyed the arrangements, and I generally like McNeely's arrangements. I've heard a few of them on other albums. So yeah, this is a jazz record for classical fans to listen to. If you like the Rite of Spring, I feel like you almost have to hear this. But if you're a purist, yeah, there's no hope for you.
No, I think this is the arrangements are good, very interesting use, and if you've got a musician of Potter's caliber, it's nice to see them put, in some other kind of environment or setting rather, where there's a different theme and something constructed around what they're going to do. And I think that gives them a different type of inspiration rather than just say, playing an album of standards or other jazz compositions, including their own, where they're kind of, limited to trading off solos. Here, their solo becomes sort of the centerpiece of something a lot bigger. And I think that brings out some expectation and hopefully, something bigger, part of a larger arc of a work like it does here. So that's really cool here. And I think these kind of things, like you say, for a classical listener, these can be something of a bridge. I remember
into jazz, maybe.
Yeah, many years ago, I was in a work environment with someone, and we got on the topic of music, and we're often tread lightly, trying to feel out a person. But this person was a real classical listener, and I mentioned that I, listened to a lot of jazz, and he said, "Well, isn't jazz sloppy?" And I thought, when I heard that word, I
know just the kind of uptight person this is. Yeah. I've met many of them.
And I had a recording that had come out around that time. But it was the Manhattan Jazz Quintet, and they had done a jazz recording of mainly classical pieces, Bach and other things, just arranged in a jazz thing. And I said, well, here, I brought it in the next time I saw him, and I said, listen to this. And he was really impressed. He had never heard or had never approached jazz in the same way, and came away with a different impression. Just because I think, jazz starts from a different starting point a lot of times with, the jazz repertoire of standard songs or other, familiar things to the jazz world. And if you don't know those tunes or where it's coming from, you're not going to understand where the improvisations are going to. But for a classical listener, to start with something that might be a bit familiar as a springboard, it gives them a little bit, more of something to hold on to and see the points from. Anyway, it could be a good bridge. And regardless, even if you just come to it on its own, it certainly stands on its own as a impressive work.
But you'd have to be like a real fan of classical music to use this as a bridge, because the Rite of Spring really isn't something that everybody enjoys.
Not everyone,
especially if they, if they're new to the music, it'll just sound really harsh to them. Although if you like rock music, Stravinsky is a good bridge into classical music, because it's just this hard, loud, cool, rocking piece. It's really great.
And Stravinsky was a jazz fan on his own. Actually, there's that great story of where he went to see Charlie Parker in New York, and Charlie Parker, who was a big fan of Stravinsky, saw him in the audience, and somehow after that, in his next solo, Charlie Parker worked in a quote from the Rite of Spring into his chord, because of course Stravinsky recognized it and got so excited he stood up and knocked over the table and the whiskey and everything. So, there are bridges between those things. Yeah, it's a great story. If it's true, I don't know, but I've read it in a few places.
There's kind of a more sinister moment where Charlie Parker, like in Clint Eastwood's movie about Charlie Parker, I can't remember what the name of it was.
Bird.
It was Bird, right? Bird. And he shows up at Stravinsky's house drunk, and he rings the bell, and Stravinsky opens the door and doesn't recognize him or anything. And he kind of, Charlie Parker disappointingly disappointedly walks away.
Who knows what's true?
I guess Stravinsky in the scene thought he was just some vagabond.
Yeah, who knows?
But anyway, he put that in. Anyway, I do like your story better, though. I hope that happens.
It's kind of inspiring, yeah. All right. Is it jazz time?
Well, I guess I think it has been for some time, but anyway.
Kind of, yeah. We got a nice
we got a big jazz selection this week.
Anyway, for the remainder of the jazz segment, we're going to go Latin this week because my Latin list was just growing with a bunch of new things added to it. And I said, let's get some of these out there.
I think you could never hear too much Latin jazz.
No. We both like Latin jazz a lot, so I thought, well, let's get some of these out, and I just picked. Well, these are 3 very recent releases, and
they're all very different as well.
Yeah, they're all very different, but unfortunately, a couple of them are challenges to actually get information, like who's playing what, that.
Yeah.
So.
No, people just put their music out. Can I just make an appeal to musicians out there who are putting your music up online, maybe like selling it through Bandcamp or something like that? Well, Bandcamp tends to list all the musicians on the album and give a brief. You need to let us know who's in your band. Okay,
please.
Those guys need. They need, they're musicians too. They need the recognition as well, and we want to, put them across. So please make sure we get all that information if you're putting your music online.
Yeah, do that. So we know who's playing what, and even more. The more information, the better. So we know what we're listening to. Anyway, we're gonna
who we're listening to too.
Yeah, who and what.
If we hear something great, we want to know who it is. We're gonna keep that person's name in mind, and if they put out a solo album 5 years from now, we'll remember. Anyway,
I've been on a kind of a trombone binge recently. If you listen to last week's episode with Matt Hall, and we're going to continue that.
Yeah, there's a lot of trombone.
There's a lot of trombone in all of this tonight too. The first one focuses on trombone, and we're going to go to Brazil. But the main star here is American trombonist Ryan Keberle, and we've got his new recording. Actually, this is an older recording too that was recorded in 2018, but just released on March 18th. It's Sonhos da Esquina. Ryan Keberle's Collectiv do Brasil. Alternate Side Records. And so Keberle is...
did I mention that Rituals is on the Full Moon Records label?
Oh, Full Moon, that's right.
Oh, sorry, Double Moon. Double Moon Records.
Double Moon, yeah.
Double Moon Records. I should have mentioned that, sorry.
Okay, Double Moon Records. Here we are on Alternate Side Records. Keberle is an established trombonist. You may have heard of him if you're a jazz listener. Originally from Washington State. He was around music from an early age, first studying classical violin and piano before he moved to trombone as his main instrument. He came to the East Coast in 1999 to study at the Manhattan School of Music, where he came under the study of Steve Turre, one of the most awesome trombonists ever. I'm waiting for him to make a new recording. Also, some other composers he studied with there. And then, let's see, he moved on to Juilliard and was a member of Juilliard's first jazz studies graduating class in 2003. And he studied under trombonist Wycliffe Gordon and also big band leader and arranger David Berger. And so then he became active on the New York scene. He also got into academics, teaching at Hunter College program, but he took time off in 2017 to go to Brazil, and while there, he engaged with 3 of the main jazz scene musicians there that are heard on this recording, and started to get some ideas for developing some new material based around Brazilian music. And so here we're going to get some kind of mixture of American jazz influence and also works of Brazilian greats Milton Nascimento and Tonino Horta, mixed with some jazz tradition. And a lot of this Brazilian music it kind of focuses on vocals as the main instrument, and here the trombone takes over that role. I think that's sort of the key kind of idea of these recordings. So we've got Ryan Keberle on trombone, who's done most of the arrangements here, and the rounding out with the Brazilian musicians, he's teamed up Felipe Silveira, piano, who's also got an arrangement on here that we'll point out, Tiago Alves on bass, and Paulino Vicente on drums. And so we get an album that's got an overall really relaxing ambiance to it. It sort of incorporates the real vibe and mood of Brazilian music, especially the Nascimento. If you like Milton Nascimento's music and the kind of mood that he evokes, I think Keberle captures a lot of that and makes the trombone really become the voice in these arrangements. So we start out with a Nascimento original. I don't know, my Portuguese pronunciation is not really good here. I don't know, Chio da Terra. And this one, a famous Nascimento piece arranged by Silveira, the pianist. It comes in with a light piano intro with nice delicate bass playing. And Keberle introduces the melody on trombone, bringing it into the upper register. And here you'll see he's able to get this real vocal quality with the trombone on the melody lines. Silveira adds some nice piano lines along with Keberle's improvisations, and nice subtle bass and drum work from Alves and Vicente. They give the beat a kind of slow heartbeat pulse to the music that just pushes it on. And I thought this piece is a nice opening when it captures the Nascimento dreamy quality that a lot of his songs have. It just makes this very Brazilian mood. After the solos, they return to a softer restatement of the melody, and Keberle brings that melody down low for a nice opening. Track 2, these are Keberle's originals, 3 of them lined up, starting with this one, Campinas. It starts with some hypnotic alternating piano chords. When Keberle comes in, he creates that lonesome feeling that only trombone can create with its unique timbre. He does it with long notes, little bends of pitch on phrases that just bring out a little kinds of unique feelings there. Vicente's a very sensitive drummer. He only adds light textures on cymbals where they're called for. The others drop out for a piano section of kind of hesitant figures before a new light groove gets established with bass and drums. And then Keberle comes back in with some solo lines that float and soar above the music below it. The groove dissipates again before it forms into a new slow beat, focusing around some gentle playing from Silveira. And there's a nice taut bass line from Alves that Keberle joins in for from some backing notes behind Silveira's playing before adding kind of nice lifting interval little line to the end. So a nice original capturing a Brazilian spirit, I thought, here. Track 3, another Keberle's original, Carbon Neutral. Environmental statement, I guess. It's a soft and pretty original melody that Keberle plays with Silveira, adding a kind of steady quarter note pulse on the piano. Just this even kind of feeling that keeps it going. The bass is sparse, the light cymbal and tom fills. Silveira has a pretty interlude of closely harmonized chords using a sustain pedal to get a little more character to it. Keberle returns with a gently rhythmic melody. Then Vicente kicks up the drum fills for some more energy, and Silveira gets a rhythmic solo over the new driving beat. Keberle's solo is also locked into the groove with more rhythmic slide figures, and he wraps it up softly with a rather unexpected interval before they return to the original pulsing melody.
One thing, yeah, in fact, the return to the original pulsing melody, I'm noticing that these pieces have a ternary form to them, sort of like in classical music, where you'll have like one theme, and then there'll be like a middle section, and then you'll return to the opening theme.
Yeah.
He seems to be composing to that structure, which is kind of interesting for me.
I noticed that too. It features in the compositions, the next one, let's see. Track 4, Sonhos da Esquina.
Sonhos da Esquina. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is very short, this one.
Yeah, it's a short one. A pulsing bass intro that continues through the tune. Here, Keberle interjects alternating. These must be overdubbed lines because he's the only one trombonist here. But they're layers of trombone that are kind of syncopated figures that create the harmony here, because the piano is almost unnoticeable. Other than on the last chord, you can kind of pick out that it's sustaining. But the harmonic stacking is all created through the trombones that come above. And there's just really light cymbal splashes that punctuate that. So it's really a trombone harmony, short little piece, completely composed. There's no improvising going on here. But it's kind of interesting and unique as a feature in the middle of it. Then we get track 5. I guess this is kind of an ode to Nascimento, because 5 is Qvid de Esquina, the Nascimento tune. It's light piano chords and solo bass melody intro that Keberle joins the bass in a unison melody. That's a nice effect. So you've got the trombone and bass working the same line. And especially the alternating notes on the phrase ends, do-de kind of thing, really, you don't often hear trombone and bass doubling each other, so that's nice. Vicente comes in delicately behind, a gentle solo from Silveira, allowing lots of space to float for the first part of the tune. He's a very sensitive drummer. I like that he doesn't play when he doesn't need to. And then he'll just come in and you realize, oh, there's drums on this song. Well, he hasn't played yet because there's enough music there. Keberle comes back with the melody on his own and the bass driving the rhythm to the final ending with some nice piano fills as well. Track 6, we're going to switch to a different composer, another famous Brazilian composer and musician, Tonino Horta, with the tune Aqui O! Exclamation point. Piano intro, rolling chords and cascading upward runs. Keberle brings in a rubato melody on top. Silveira starts a new even rhythmic pattern. It's joined by bass and light cymbals that Keberle floats a new melody over. Vicente kicks up the beat a bit and gets it kind of swinging. The groove ebbs and flows between the infused kind of samba feel and then the relaxed feel that picks up intensity at the peak of Keberle's solo and also in Silveira's funky solo with heavier chords. And Keberle comes back for the melody to the end. Track 7, one of Nascimento's famous tunes, Tarde. Very slow and pretty piano intro before Keberle takes the melody. He really brings out the longing and mournful quality with his trombone tone, vibrato, and perfectly placed little bends of pitch. It's spacious and free-flowing. Vicente adds light drumming that kind of evaporates in spots. As I said, he's very sensitive and never overplays. Silveira takes a piano interlude, and then Keberle comes back with some more intense and soaring long melodic phrases to the end, and Silveira adding tasty lines underneath. And we get to the final track, another Horta tune, Francisca. Rubato piano intro from Silveira gets some rhythm going, and that's joined by Alves on bass. Keberle brings in the melody phrases that have a kind of swinging quality to them in their rhythm. Vicente keeps it light with little touches and clicks, and Alves gets a bass solo here, focusing on very tight upper register tones. And Silveira gets a solo too, with appealing motion, rolling phrases, and some speedy runs. Nice piano work. Then Keberle returns for an intense solo where underneath Vicente kicks up the rhythm to match it. And they take the melody for a final ride to a lush ending with a nice pitch drop and what sounds like an exhalation through the trombone from Keberle. If you listen to it, you'll hear...
I was wondering what that was, actually.
Kind of like a decompression suit or something like that. Yeah. I'm not sure if it was intended, but it made it on the record. So I thought this is a subtle and pretty collection of songs that capture the softer side of Brazilian musical sounds. Keberle's trumpet takes on a more vocal role and character that matches the subtlety that all the musicians show with a real love for this style of music. So, yeah, it's a very kind of gentle vibe, beautiful timbre, nice rhythmic, subtle playing rather than overly enthusiastic or anything. And yeah, it's a nice lazy day listen to put you in a good mood.
Yeah, it's a good feeling album. I think subtle is the key word here. It doesn't particularly come across as Brazilian unless you if you think, because we think bossa nova,
samba or something,
and it doesn't sound anything like that. It's more, it's like Milton Nascimento, like you said, but like exactly, jazz, it's really straight ahead jazz. So if you know those tunes, you'll think maybe Brazilian. But it's like you said, it's a more subtle side of Brazil, and it's a good kind of uplifting listen and a little and pretty gentle. I liked it.
Yeah, gentle listen. But nice, again, a nice trombone feature.
And trombone.
And on that side. So now we're going to shift gears and we're going to go to a little more spicy Latin. And we're going to go to New York. And
New York.
First we're going to dive into some salsa.
Boy.
I don't know.
Bringing back my salsa dancing
days. That's what I'm going to say. Listeners may not know it, but Mike used to be a mambo king on the dance scene, the salsa dance scene in Japan.
As the old lady in Woody Allen's movie Annie Hall says, I was quite a lively dancer.
Yeah, what happened? Why did you give that up?
I'd rather not discuss that on the podcast.
Oh, okay. Well,
I just kind of grew disillusioned with the scene, let's say.
I hit a sore spot.
No, it wasn't that.
My shoes was driving me crazy. That wasn't at a Jerky Boys.
Was that? Did he say that?
Something like that. It was my eyes, I think. But he brought all his shoes or something. Yeah. All right.
It was one of Alvy Singer's aunts.
Yeah.
Aunts in Annie Hall that said I was quite a lively dancer. She was like this.
Anyway, just
this
so
old
our
Jewish
audience
woman
knows that Mike is an experienced salsa dancer.
I am.
And so if you hear tell of his exploits on the salsa scene, they're all true. Anyway, here we've got a brand new, another one, March 11th, this came out, the conga player, or conguero, I guess, conguero, as they say.
Yeah, I want to say, although I did salsa dance, I really don't know much about the music or the artists. I know some of them. But I didn't go home and buy loads of salsa albums or anything like that.
Well, I don't know the intricate details of Latin music and the different rhythms and the regions. It's a whole new world. All I know is I like them all. So,
but there are a lot of them, and they're subtly different. And Latin people know them, but exactly. I couldn't make them out. You have to be from there to really know those things. I think
you were focusing on the ladies.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. This is a funny thing. I want to just tell people out there, if you start doing salsa dance, or really any kind of dance, women start looking at you like you're like a man, you know what I mean? Like you're somebody they want to be with. But when you do a podcast, they don't even know you exist.
Well,
that's been my experience so far.
Here's your chance to do a salsa podcast and get the best of both.
Yeah, I'm going to do a sound-only salsa podcast. That'll be great.
Anyway, here we are.
It was fun, though. I enjoyed doing salsa. I haven't done it in a long time, though.
Salsa para ti. Salsa for you,
yeah.
Mike.
There you go.
Ubiquity Recordings, the conga player Johnny Blas from New York. And his new recording. So Johnny Blas has been around for a long time in the world of Latin music, 40-some years. He's played with lots of different band leaders, Ray Barreto, Armando Peraza, or rather he's influenced by Ray Barreto, but also by the jazz world. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and on this recording we're going to hear him not only on conga and percussion, but also on sax and flute, which drew me to this recording. And I thought, okay, let's hear what's going on here. And so I have to say that this album came out. It's not available on CD yet. And from Johnny Blas's website, it says it will be available on vinyl. I don't know if it's going to make it to CD, and there's no album notes.
However, DJs are going to play CDs these days. They're not going to play vinyl at a salsa dance.
Yeah. So anyway, from Johnny Blas's website, it says that current members of his band. That's what it lists. This is not album notes, so this could be off, but it may line up here with what we've got. And I've got some other notes from one listener. Maybe I'll just go with that for the solo ones, because I'm not sure on all the other band information, because the album notes are not available. Anyway, I've got an interesting mixture here of music, and we're going to start with a track, Bergeron Stop 8, which I guess is a stop in Chicago on one of the lines. And here, it was cool. I'm going to hear Blas on saxophone, and also timpani, bongo, and tumbadoras, or congas, I guess, here. So we get a great conga intro, get you into this salsa mix here. Great groove building over trombone lines. This album has great trombone lines because you've got multiple trombonists on it. Great trombone and sax solos alternating with verse lyrics. The trombones and rhythms break before a piano solo by Yendris Cespedes. Lots of tasty percussion solo interludes.
This is a slamming track, actually, as far as
you should be up and dancing
goes.
With all the ladies right away. Now,
I want to mention, all of this stuff is like for the clubs, but really, like with any kind of popular music, at the dance clubs, the most popular tunes are the ones that they have vocals on them. They're sung. These have vocals like in the choruses, but there's no soloist really usually.
Right.
But a lot of the big popular salsa songs will have a soloist.
Yeah. Track 2, El Conguero. This is by
it's a cha-cha rhythm.
Edwin Blas, kind of a soulful cha-cha by Edwin Blas. We get Venezuelan Robert Inselli on a great saxophone solo on here. And we get a conga beat, getting that cha-cha going with nice trombone lines. Inselli's sax is like really more R&B and jazz infused, more so than Latin, but it's cool. It's kind of ragged and rough, gets things whooped up. Nice vocal interchange here. The only thing I don't care for on this track and some of the others is this synthy string kind of backing. I know that's part of a Latin music kind of thing. Synthy strings.
Being acoustic, fans of acoustic music, you hear that and it's kind of...
But the overall vibe is really good. Anyway, track 3, this is an interesting one, Boranda. Now, originally, this is a Brazilian pop song, but it was kind of translated and transformed by Ruben Blades back in the 70s on an album that also has Hector Lavoe, the great, everyone who knows salsa music knows him as backup singing too, and became part of like the salsa repertoire. And so here, really cool arrangement of it. This has got Yauco Martin Padilla on vocals, Carlos Soriano on piano, and Blas is on congas here. Nice percussion intro. Big trombone entrance with great harmonized trombone parts. And then Padilla enters on vocals, but the trombones stay really big in the arrangement. It takes some twists and turns in the rhythms. The whole tune's direction has some really unexpected harmonies. It's a good arrangement with little piano interludes between verses. Ordiano gets a long piano solo. He keeps it kind of simple and rhythmic, keeping people dancing. Big trombones bring back in the vocals, and some really pounding salsa piano. And this one stretches out 8.5 minutes long, so it's a good one to get you out on the dance floor, I would imagine. Listen to it. Now, what I like...
Lead vocals way up front on that one, by the way.
Yeah, it's really up front, yeah. So I think, Blas is, from the Latin music world, but he also has a jazz background too. So he does include 2 jazz standards on this album, which is a little bit of a diversion. If you look on his Facebook page, he has a couple of recorded videos where he talks about this album having lots of different kinds of music, and it's true, because here we get the jazz standard, usually done as a ballad, Never Let Me Go, Jay Livingston and Ray Evans tune, and Blas switches over to alto sax on here, and he plays the jazz standard. It's nicely styled to a Latin beat. Blas himself has kind of a tart alto kind of tone to his playing, but he keeps it passionate. He gets a high cry up into his short solo. Again, there's some of that synthy string backing parts, but otherwise it's a very sparse arrangement. In some parts, it's Blas only soloing over just bass and the Latin percussion with no harmony behind it. And it's short and sweet, take about 3 3/4 minutes on this tune. Track 5, we get a Johnny Blas original, Shy Town Part 1. This is a nice, intense mambo with a thick trombone arrangement. And here, Blas switches over to flute. And it's a nice flute solo. He actually makes it quite bluesy over this mambo rhythm. Inselli is back with the rambunctious sax solo that gets some trombone backing. And then Ordiano gets a piano solo with lots of stretched out rhythmic figures with pauses. I think only real Latin players can do these convincingly. Yeah. And then the trombones come in big for a final press to the end. Continue with the Blas originals, Danzon for Roxio, slow Cuban style dance, again with Blas on flute on this one. It's a pretty minor melody. It's kind of evocative.
This is also a cha-cha tempo.
A cha-cha.
Actually. Yeah.
The chords are a little bit evocative of like an autumn leaves kind of minor progression, but it gets some more punch with percussion as backing vocals come in, and Blas continues with flute improvisations, and we also get some nice rhythmic piano work here.
I know a lot. It's funny talking about salsa. I know a lot of the dance rhythms in Latin music. The cha-cha, the merengue, the mambo and all this stuff, but I don't know the American ones. Remember, like things like the Charleston or things.
Oh, right.
I have no idea what that rhythm is. I just
right.
Well, what would make you do it? I kind of know what it looks like, but I'm sort of.
I wonder. I guess those kind of briefly flourished in the '90s with the kind of swing revival, but
that was
they haven't
cool.
Stuck around like.
Because in the 50s, kids used to dance. It was kind of like a rite of passage. You had to dance with your girlfriend.
Right.
But we don't do that anymore.
No, we don't.
Which is sad, I think.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have known those dances.
That could be a new dating app, like, dancing kind of thing. Nah. Yeah. What am I talking about? What do I know?
We should be dancing. It's a good way for boys and girls to get together,
Yeah. Next one.
What do you got next? Yeah.
Unfinished Business.
Yeah.
This kind of captivates with a hypnotic kind of rhythm. This is very kind of African in style. It's a nice groove that develops. Flute and trombone arrangement are cool. The bones get a repetitive riff that builds into a percussion jam over piano chords. More cool trombone lines. Inselli comes back on the flute for some more improvised lines.
Improvised, that's the word.
Improvised lines. And followed by more trombones and a piano vamp out with a final mystical flute line. It's kind of just a little African tag there to show its roots. This one's all about the rhythm and kind of a mystery to it. Then we get the title track, number 8, Salsa para ti, Johnny Blas original. This one has a really infectious groove, piercing flute lines, great trombone arrangement. Vasquez has an energetic trombone solo as well as Cespedes on piano. This is a real fun one. Get you up moving to the salsa rhythm. 9, Baya que Baya. This is a tune by Ovidio Guerra and Tomas Martinez. And this one features Daniel Castillo on vocals. This bursts out with trombones, great descending bass line, passionate vocals with nice harmonized backing vocals as well, and kicking trombone arrangements. Nice percussion parts with timbales. The bass part gets down very deep and has some funky slaps too, kind of like a funk bass to it. And a nice flute here. I'm not sure who's playing it on this track, but it's a nice addition. And percussion and vocal breakdown with whistles added to it. So first time we hear that in here. And a nicely arranged trombone finish. So real stylish track with this one. Then we get a final jazz twist with interesting take on...
this was an interesting take indeed. Yeah.
Monks Round Midnight. And so this is Blas's brother, Edwin Blas, that plays trombone on this recording, who has arranged this as Guajira, Cuban dance style to Round Midnight. So the intro comes in with a trombone arrangement, and the rhythm shifts a little bit simpler, and then the trombone takes the melody. You won't know what's coming from the intro, but it all leads up to the Round Midnight melody that becomes familiar when the trombone takes it, and then it gets more arranged with other trombones added in, some more synth backing. The piano solo is rhythmic and simple, but I think maybe Monk would have liked it because, he played rhythmic and relatively simple lines that were just kind of profound. It fades out, and then it goes full Guajira style with the outro and more trombone arrangement becoming completely Latin on its own. So, yeah, kind of unique. You haven't heard Round Midnight like this before.
Yeah, certainly not. I certainly hadn't.
Kind of as an outro, track 11, Chi-Town Part 2. It's similar to the Part 1. You just get more of the same because it was good. Intense trombones again. More bluesy flute from Blas. Inselli gets some more really intense sax. And Ordiano takes some funky piano, and it fades out. So I think this recording's...
Fades out.
Yeah, it's a little bit rough around the edges.
Yeah, I'd say too.
But
it's not like a hi-fi kind of recording. Yeah. It sounds kind of old, but they want that, obviously.
But it's very energetic, and it covers a broad spectrum of Latin genres, mixing in a healthy amount of jazz, and the vocals are kind of inspired. You get a lot of different instrumentation with the flute, some more intense and jazzy sax than you'll usually hear on kind of salsa in Latin. And you get these great trombones too, with lots of great percussion because, that's Blas's major thing. So it's kind of a fun new recording. Check it out if you like salsa music and Latin music in general.
Yeah, I thought this was really more of a salsa album than a jazz album. It just kind of, I just picked up on all the dancey rhythms and stuff. It could easily be played in clubs, and I'm guessing that'll happen quite a bit.
Yeah, I think mainly it is, but it just happens to have these two "Never Let Me Go" and "Around Midnight" thrown in there. So it caught my eye, and I thought,
it was kind of an odd. It was kind of an odd excursion, I thought, but it was enjoyable. Certainly high energy as far as a lot of the tunes go. Well, I got to say, spring has sprung here in Japan. We've been talking about spring, and this was my first night of not using the heater since November, and I was all excited about that. But now I'm getting cold. So as you launch into the next track, I'm just going to take the headphones off for a second and turn the heater on. So take it away.
Oh, okay. Go make yourself warm.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into Distancia, which is the new release by Manuel Valera and a new Cuban Express big band. So kind of a Latin big band release, brand new as well, coming out on March 18th. And as Mike turns on his heater, we'll look back a little bit. We had featured Manuel Valera and his trio recording. This was back in episode 19, and that was his recording live at Diez Once. Do you remember that one, Mike?
Yeah, I'm back now, by the way. My heat is on. What was the question again? Do I remember what?
So we had done one previous Manuel Valera live recording. That was back in episode 19.
Good God.
Yeah. And,
I'm trying to think back.
Yeah. Anyway, we both liked it.
I don't remember.
That was a small group setting live. And so Valera's been Grammy nominated in the past, worked with Latin greats Paquito de Rivera, Arturo Sandoval, and others. And this is his second album with New Cuban Express Big Band. And this kind of modern Latin ensemble, it kind of encapsulates lots of Cuban, Puerto Rican, and Brazilian rhythms together into a kind of cohesive modern sound. And I think the strength here is just the arranging and the awesome big band. That the end product is amazing on this album, and it features a lot of the great New York based musicians who function in jazz and Latin world, and we get a lot of exciting solos and things here. Now, I won't read through the whole list of musicians because there's a lot of them on different tracks. People switch out and whatnot, but it's all available on online on his site and different sites as well. I'll just pick up who the soloists are in tunes here. So this is a really interesting album. It's actually kind of hard to describe this music because there's so much happening with the changing sections of the big band, and the arranging is so great that it moves through different waves of sound constantly. So it's hard to put all of that into words. So I'll just try to give you a picture. But this is also a long album. It's an hour.
Yeah, it was
an hour and 12 minutes. So there's a lot of music here,
and it's also it's fairly complicated music in that there's a lot happening in it and a lot of changes. But it's got a fairly intellectual element to it. But it's not like hard to listen to music. I want to make sure you understand that it goes into the ear, but there's a lot to hear.
There's a lot to hear, but it's all pleasing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it takes a little bit of attention, let's say.
Yeah. So let's run through it. We've started out with
Expectativas.
Expectativas. That's it. Yeah. That's what I wanted to say. Expectativas.
I know you did.
This is like a building band chord and then a bass riff that's joined by piano. The horn section lines intersect, building this theme. It gets a driving Latin beat with tight cymbal work on drum kit with added Latin percussion. There's a new contrasting section that starts softer and builds up after the first theme. And then there's an intriguing repeated phrase inside of that. This is just one little detail of the great arrangement, but it's doubled on trumpet and piano. that ends in little trills. And what I like in a lot of the arrangements is in the larger ensemble, he'll pick two instruments that come, in a unison theme that stick out. And this is the first instance of that just caught my ear. There's an intriguing other repeated phrases too. A tart and fluid alto sax solo by Remy Leboeuf, getting some angsty edge over drumming and Latin percussion. A nice trumpet solo by Alex Norris, followed by percussion breakdown featuring Samuel Torres on percussion, split up by kind of band and piano breaks that alternate. And then the melody comes back in to the full band arrangement. So there's lots of thick sounds on all of these tracks. Track 2 is Gemini. This is a more of a jazz swinging beat kind of feel. I won't say it's a real driving swing, but it's got a swing feel that changes up to Latin sometimes in it. It starts with a repeated piano note, then a bass note, until both take flight from those patterns, and the band joins in. The bass keeps the quarter note pushed forward as the band sections trade and swell until things kind of fade away over sparse piano. Stuart Mack gets to build up a trumpet solo from that point. He works through some real modern harmonies as the groove comes back, and then the horn lines come in for backing. Here we get a nice bari sax solo, Andrew Gutauskas on bari sax. Valera gets some solo time after the bari for himself, impressing with dizzying runs. It resolves and transforms with some rising guitar lines, and then moves into a new section with some kind of new lines with flute standing out as it works back into the original theme with a full band arrangement again. And then Alex Goodman on electric guitar helps it settle down at the end with some spacey electric guitar phrases over Valera's piano. Really great big band arranging.
Yeah, one of the things about this track that kind of got me is whenever a new soloist would start playing, the accompaniment, the entire rhythm and the entire like rhythmic profile of the accompaniment would just completely change.
Yeah.
And I was kind of wondering if how that worked. I mean, it felt like the soloists were dictating the changing feel of the piece. Like usually, like the soloist will hear what the band is doing and they'll play over that or the previous soloist. But in this case, it felt like he would start playing and the whole band would respond to that, which seems really an impressive
it's like they had
feat to me.
Customized backgrounds for each solo section.
That's a good description of what it was.
That was interesting.
It was an interesting track. Gemini. Give that a listen. This is your good sample track here. I think.
Good one.
And you'll see what I mean by that. This is it's a complicated album in a sense. This is really, I think, what we mean by adult music. It kind of keeps you on your toes, and you kind of have to be paying attention to it.
There's a lot to listen to here. I wish I had a few more listens before I could even talk about it because there's so much here. Track 3 is From Afar. This one starts with quiet and lush lines arranged, and this is a really interesting feature of these arrangements. There's two vocalists on this album, and that's what they are. They're vocalists. They're not singers because they vocalize as another voice in the ensemble. And so here we have Camilla Meza, and her voice is added as another sound in the big band as part of the horns, which also include many layers and different tones with mutes and other sounds. So the human voice becomes part of this great mixture. A bass line emerges and starts a new section with an now you could slap me if I'm wrong, but this sounded like an oboe to me, unless it was someone who has like a really interesting sound on soprano sax. We do have bass clarinet and other things in here. There's no oboe listed, but the tone of this instrument really threw me for a loop here.
So there's no other high reed instrument listed?
Not listed there. Only soprano sax, but that doesn't sound like soprano sax to me. Anyway,
I didn't write anything down about it.
It's super lush. There are little percussion textures added for nice effects, and then Meza's voice comes back in on a unison line with trumpet. It sounds really lovely. The intonation is almost perfect, and they follow these two voices in unison through the rest of the arrangement. It builds to a thicker arrangement with trombones, and then the mutes come out for more open brass. They settle down. Michael Rodriguez gets a really nuanced trumpet solo, taut lyrical phrases over deep, punchy electric bass lines here. And Rodriguez, by the way, we did his solo album Pathways in episode 16. Great trumpet player and part of this big band too. So you can go back and check out our old episode from last year and that release to hear more of his playing. Nice horn backing lines that weave in to push Rodriguez on in his solo. Then the piece kind of works back into more lushness with the voice, human voice added back in. But this time, the deep bass and drums keep up the intensity and add in to push it to a new section with hard-driving piano solo from Valera. The drum and percussion groove is really intense. The horns and the voice come in for another layer over Valera's intense solo and then take over with the melody phrases to the end. And this is a real long musical journey, more than 10 minutes for this piece.
Actually, all the tracks on this album are pretty really long and involved. Okay. So.
Yeah. Yep. The charts for the big man, they must need like 3 music stands to open them up, you know. It's great. This reminds me of a time, I don't know if I told this story on here before, but when I was in university playing in a big band, we had a couple guys from the Sun Ra Orchestra show up.
That must have been something.
Yeah, so we were out near Buffalo, and these guys came up, and so it was one of the trombone players and a drummer, and so they had all these charts, and they brought them, and but instead of using like standard musical notation and formation and having like codas, he had inserts. So you would get to the end of like these many pages and then he would say, okay, go to the blue insert. What? So the music would stop and we'd be fumbling around for these pages, you know, and we were really cool. Like, we're really playing Sun Ra's music. Oh, this is, you know, great. So we have to find the blue. So we got the blue, and then you get to there's another mark, you know, the next is like the silver insert. So we got to the final insert. It turned out that he left it on the hotel bed. And we didn't have it, so we couldn't finish the piece, you know. So there were these incredibly long, you know, pieces. You have to spread them out over, you know, get them all over the floor and stuff.
I wonder if that was what playing in the Sun Ra Orchestra was like, you know.
I have no idea. Yeah.
No, I left that piece on my bed. We can't play it tonight. I don't know.
Well, they were cool guys anyway, but never got to finish that piece. So. Yeah.
I remember. But did you ever see the Sun Ra orchestra? The orchestra.
Orchestra not live, no.
Because he was, they were great. They were just, it was like a real event. Because in college we loved them, even though we weren't really that into jazz. Because they come up in the, they had a name for their kind of bus. It was like a spaceship. Like
spaceship, exactly.
Yeah, the orchestra would come in, and they would all claim to be from outer space. Right, so it was really cool. The whole vibe was just really fun. It was really great.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he made more albums than like anyone else in jazz. Like
it's possible.
His discography is ridiculously long.
Unreleased things are still coming out these days. So. Yeah. All right, back to this release here. Anyway, number 4 is Pathways. Rhythmic piano figure started out. There's tight cymbal work, and it's get added to a sax line. It's joined by Camille Meza on vocalizations again, and I like how her voice gets unison lines with different instruments here as well. The arrangement swells to a full band power with great low-end bari sax in the arrangement. Things quiet for a tenor sax solo by Jeremy Powell, then swelling backing lines with flute add a nice touch. There's a little interlude with more flute lines and a bass solo by Hamish Smith over the rhythmic figures of Valera. And then we get stacked trombones and vocalization backing for the bass that's nicely arranged. A new section featuring vocalization works back to the original theme idea with punchy trombones added to the right and saxes to the left channel. It builds up to some drum feature time for Jimmy McBride, while Valera keeps the chords going on piano, and then the horns jump back in for some stabbing lines, and Mesa's voice is added, building to a final, fully arranged finish. Track 5, From the Ashes. This is a rhythmic piano and percussion intro layered with horn lines, dense with flutes and mutes, and big accented syncopated bass. This sets up Valera for a little spotlight before the horn sections come in again, building into a climax that releases for a trombone solo by Matt McDonald. He starts out sounding a bit lonesome, but a huge kicking beat in the bass and drums drive him to funkiness. Things settle down for some piano from Valera. The driving beat gets going again, and he responds with fiery lines zigging and zagging up and down the keyboard. The horns come in for backing and launch into some full power and funky full phrases. This works into a soprano sax solo from Michael Thomas, and he strangles the goose here. Intense phrases.
He goes for that snake dance.
Yep, strangles it a bit. Sounds cool. Rapid figures under this soprano sax solo. Man, the drummer sets this killer groove. This rhythm section really knows how to lay it down. And the horn backing comes in again behind the solo, as we've seen through all the tunes so far. The final section gives Valera another little piano interlude before building to the end with some muscular brass lines.
And it ends with a really harsh chord, which was very cool.
Very cool tune. Yeah. I like that. I just got the impression like of this goose, you just grab its neck and what kind of sound does it make? You can do that on soprano,
Yep. Yeah. Oh boy.
6 is kind of an interesting, different type of tune, impressionistic romance. It seems to be all built around this kind of dizzy little riff figure that the piano introduces right in the beginning. It then becomes a basis for horn lines that come in. The rhythm in this piece is really strange. It starts out in like a 7/4 pattern. Then it changes to 8 beats, or either 2 groups of 4, and then back again throughout the piece. So the rhythm changes up. It's kind of hard to follow. That figure, the original riff, gets passed around through different sections throughout the piece and built upon. Trombone lines in here are huge and thick because the ensemble features also a bass trombone. And that is a beast in this recording. It'll really come out and punch you between the eyes on some of these lines. The horns settle out for a piano solo by Valera, and the bass picks up the riff for a tease underneath his solo. That riff idea is constantly going to be reminded to you throughout the piece. Valera's really fueled up with ideas on this one. Rapid fire, stop and start phrases, adventurous harmonies, snappy rhythms. The band comes in again to build it up after a brief hold. There's like a little fermata in the piece. Then Valera restarts with the riff again. The band arrangement works around the melody once more with the riff reappearing. I like the drum snare work underneath when the band gets that riff. He sort of brings up the tension on the drums. Valera gets a harmonized version of the riff again, and then the band layers the harmonizations with thick trombones to riff out as Valera spins off counterlines, building little lines to finish. So, yeah, I guess it's impressionistic. It works off from this riff idea and sort of explores the possibilities in different rhythmic and harmonic ways. So, interesting track. Then we get a title track, tune number 7, Distancia. This one starts with pretty piano cascades into a rubato solo theme. It's slightly melancholy feel to it. The band comes in rapping with soprano sax solo line and vocalizations. We've got a different vocalist here, Bonia Kuczynska, I think. It's a tough one to pronounce, yeah. It's lush with flutes in unison with guitar and sax and then voice and trumpet weaving lines. The tempo and rhythm feels like a loping slow waltz, maybe 6/8 or 3/4. Hard to tell, but it's in groups of 3. Thicker and kind of dense sax and trombone lines build it up and then disperse for soprano solo by Charles Pillow. This is really nice. He has a dreamy, melodic, improvised lines with a wistful tone. Trades it over to Mike Fahey, or Fahie, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, for a trombone solo. Starts with some really rapid fire but softly articulated notes and seducing bends. He works up to a call in the high register, then he dives down for some lower intervals, works around the trombone a bit, and he adds a long, yearning high note towards the end. Interesting trombone solo. The theme comes back with lush orchestration around Kikinchka's voice and Valera working rhythmic figures and chords underneath. The phrasing rhythms change up for the kind of ending section, which sounds like a coda because it's rather different from the original piece in it, but it stays lush to the end. So interesting title track.
It reminded me a little bit of a Maria Schneider track.
Yeah, very dense and moving lines intersecting, lots of things going on. Yeah. And we end up with Remembered. This one starts with a funky bass and guitar intro. It gets stacked and syncopated, muted trumpets and open trombones making stabbing lines that come in over weaving sax lines. This is all these layers on this whole album. It's really hard to talk about all the things that go on at once.
Right.
It chills out a bit for Valera to come in with a piano theme, doubled in the muted trumpets. So here you get piano and trumpet working the same kind of idea. This works into a full band arrangement again. There's some nice light conga and percussion backing going on. Then Alex Goodman gets some echoey futuristic guitar solo lines that sort of descend from 50s science fiction into here. Kind of interesting contrast. Then we get Andy Clausen on trombone. He gets some kind of bullfrog-like trombone lines, working intervals, tricky rhythmic figures, multiple tonguing, and pitch bends. Another unique trombone solo. That segues into another new section with interesting horn lines that go from muted to open brassy ideas. Another trumpet solo by David Smith here, who spaces out kind of rhythmic lines and shows a brighter tone. And then tricky new woodwind line works into the final full band section to the big finish, punctuated by heavy drum hits and Latin percussion. So in some, I think you need to listen to this album a lot to pull out everything that's in here, but it's an exciting recording. It shows great arranging. Almost an orchestral sense of multiple instrumentation and timbre possibilities. We've got a whole woodwind section that can play multiple instruments, flute, bass, clarinet. We got different mutes in the trumpets and trombones, including bass trombone, human voice added in as just another line in the mix. And then Valera uses a variety of modern Latin rhythms to give a kind of big scale rhythmic palette that creates different sort of emotions and feelings that vary according to the piece and direction of each section of the composition. Valera's solos are energetic and creative. He gives a lot of the other members of his band solo spaces to show off their unique musical personalities. And as Mike mentioned, the backing for the solos seems to be customized almost to what's happening in their little spotlights. So I think this recording just needs repeated listening to pull out all the unique things. It's a masterpiece of big band arranging and very enjoyable material. So yeah, it's Latin, but it's more jazz influenced, and it's sort of, I think it's hard to classify what it exactly is, but it's a large ensemble with great arranging and also nice soloists that stand out. So give it a listen.
Yeah, I was going to say it's Latin musicians, but it's not a Latin sounding album.
Not overly, no. Yeah.
Yeah. It's And it's, you can't really call it swing either. It's a lot of styles, and the approaches, the individual tracks are pretty complexly organized, arranged. Everything about this requires a bit of attention and a heightened consciousness, I think. When we called this podcast, like I said earlier, adult music, I think we were thinking about music like this. This really is music for adults. Kids aren't going to get this.
No.
It's just complicated. It takes patience. It's going to take a few listens, and it's all enjoyable. It's not hard to approach, but once you're in it, you know, it's going to be... There's
just a lot there. I mean, there's so many instruments. And just picking out what you're listening to is an exercise. You know,
right.
You know, there's that bass trombone. Oh, what's that? And next, and identifying the tonal colors is an exercise in itself. Yeah.
All right. And speaking of tonal colors, I think we're gonna have to turn the pink neon sign off for this week until our next episode. I was trying to come up with some kind of a metaphor there. I don't know.
Yeah. So we've got some Latin works. We've got a lot of trombone. We've got a lot of
trombone. We got a Rite of Spring with a big band. A jazz Rite of Spring, kind of.
We've got a bassoon feature. Where are you going to get that?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I should mention, that's on the... I didn't mention the label. That's Atma Classique, the... Jancourt. I gotta get better at that. I gotta name all the labels. And of course, Ritual by Jim McNeely was on Double Moon Records.
Double Moon.
Especially, you want to especially mention those smaller labels,
right?
You know.
Yeah, we want to encourage these labels that get out music that might not be heard in other places. So do check out. All the links and information are available there, as we said.
I'm all small label this week. Next week will be a little different, I think.
All right. Any hints for next week?
I haven't really decided yet, though. But I have, we liked John Wilson's recording Respighi. Remember that? Mm-hmm. It was a fantastic Super Audio CD, and he's got a new Super Audio CD of Ravel's orchestral work, so I figure we'll do that. Okay. And I've got, I think, a harp recording as well, like a solo harp. I think we do one or two of those a year. This one came out, and I thought, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, maybe something for Lent. The Pergolesi Stabat Mater that I mentioned earlier in the episode. I guess those are the three we'll do for classical next week.
All right. I'll try to match something.
I don't want to hit you too hard with the vocals, but Stabat Mater, this particular recording features Jodie DeVos, the she of the yellow sweater from last year's episode. About,
right. Yeah.
So she's one of the two soloists on that.
Right. Okay. I'll have to decide.
So I've left the heater off. It's on now, but I left it off enough to get our runny nose. I didn't think it was going to get this cold at night, because when we started, it was nice and warm and sunny, and now it's nighttime.
Yeah, it's going to get cold again this week a little bit. That's the way it is here in Japan as we break into spring.
Right.
And then it'll get sweaty really soon.
Oh, yeah. But I like that. I like the sweatier. I like that better than the winter cold.
Okay.
To be honest. I don't know. I peeled myself out of my chair.
You'll have to move to Florida when you retire. Go down to Boca de la Vista.
Boca de la Vista. Or maybe Thailand. I don't know.
Thailand would be
massages,
better, if we could
get massages every day of my life. You know. Although not anymore, because I remember when I first started going to Thailand, everything was really cheap, but that's not the case now.
It's not cheap anymore.
Sort of, it's not. It's kind of which is too bad. It used to be. You would throw money around and everybody'd be happy about that, but now they still want you to do that, but you can't, because it's just not. Everything's gotten more expensive now.
Yeah, I don't know where you can go.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
we'll figure out those problems in the future. Expensive. The whole world is expensive, but podcasts are free for the time being.
They are, for the time being. So
join us again next week for episode 57 of Adult Music. We'll have some new releases for you again. And as I mentioned before, the complete podcast listening list on Deezer, the playlist, we get up a week early, so I'll have that up tomorrow after I put my picks with Mike's together. So if you want to listen to things a week early, you can check that out a day after the podcast is released, and that's only available on Deezer.
So how many albums are we going to have up on these links this week? Like 4 or something? You know, can you get links to all these recordings?
For sure.
That we talked about? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We'll have them all up there, and you can check them all out. And please, as we said, if you like the episode, do like or subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and check us out on Facebook. You can find us there now. Just search for Adult Music Podcast. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly, our email address is adultmusicpodcast, all one word, @gmail.com. Thanks again for our new neon logo to fast signs of Staten Island, New York. I hope lots of people see it, because it's all on Apple Podcasts and Podbean this week, so I hope it catches some eyes.
Yeah, it certainly catches my eye. When I put my Apple Podcast, thing up, it just stands out. That pink,
that's right.
Catches your eye. I like it a lot. Good work, everybody. All right. I did get some odd, people are kind of puzzled by it. They say, "Oh, it looks like an adult movie." I'm like, yeah, that's
the
what
idea.
It's supposed to look like. That's the idea. Because we're not talking about classical music and jazz like we're snobs. We're talking about it like we're kind of
the podcast you listen to when
the seedy adults that we are.
When nobody else is looking.
That could be a logo. That's good.
That could be our logo. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
We'll have to put some more thought into that. Yeah, could be a new marketing slogan.
That's quite good. Yeah.
All right, folks, until next week then, keep listening, and we'll see you again next time.